In my first week as the new owner of Sterling and Pierce Investment Group, I watched my ex-husband's jaw drop as his secretary, the same woman he'd left me for 2 years ago, handed him my memo announcing company-wide position reviews. The look on face when he realized I now controlled his fate was worth every penny of the $48 million acquisition. Of course, Thaddeus had no idea yet that I was behind the mysterious new ownership, but he would soon learn that karma has a way of coming full circle, especially in the corporate world. Before we dive into how I transformed from a betrayed wife to the owner of Chicago's fastest-growing investment firm, hit subscribe to join our community of survivors who turned their setbacks into spectacular comebacks. Together, we'll explore stories where success becomes the sweetest revenge. Now, let's begin. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my temporary corner office on the 42nd floor. I smoothed down my perfectly tailored Chanel suit, a far cry from the business-casual attire I'd worn during my previous life at Sterling and Pierce. The irony wasn't lost on me that I now sat in the exact spot where 2 years ago I'd overheard Thaddeus and his secretary Victoria planning their romantic getaway while I was supposedly out of town at a client meeting. My fingertips traced the edge of the sleek mahogany desk as I watched the early morning bustle through the glass walls. Employees hurried past, stealing curious glances at the mysterious new consultant hired by the anonymous buyers. The rumor mill was already churning. Whispers about the upcoming board meeting and the dramatic changes ahead filled the air. Perfect. Let them wonder. Ms. Chen? My new assistant Michael appeared at the door. The preliminary audit reports you requested. He placed a thick folder on my desk, his expression carefully neutral. I'd specifically chosen him for his discretion, a quality I'd learned to value above all else. Thank you, Michael. And the other matter? Mr. Sterling has been expressing concerns about the ownership transition, rather vocally, I might add. He's demanded a meeting with the new owners at least 3 times this morning. I suppressed a smile. Thaddeus had always been predictable in his arrogance. Even now, he assumed. He could simply demand his way into the inner circle, the same way he'd assumed I'd never recover from his betrayal, never rebuild, never rise above the humiliation of being left for a woman 10 years my junior. Let him stew for now, I replied, opening the folder. The board meeting is in 2 hours. He'll get all the answers he needs then. As Michael left, I began reviewing the documents, though I already knew every detail by heart. Over the past 2 years, I'd studied Sterling and Pierce's operations with an intensity that would have shocked my former colleagues. Every weakness, every vulnerability, every opportunity for improvement, I'd mapped them all out while building my own investment empire from scratch. Through the glass, I caught sight of Victoria hurrying past, her designer heels clicking against the marble floors. She'd been promoted to executive assistant shortly after my divorce was finalized, a detail that had fueled my determination during countless late nights and endless strategic planning sessions. She looked nervous, no doubt sensing the shifting winds of change. My phone buzzed with a message from the board chairman. Everything's set for 10 a.m. The papers are ready. I smiled, remembering his expression when I'd first presented my acquisition proposal. He'd been skeptical at first. They all had been. A woman they'd written off as just another trophy wife, returning with enough capital and business acumen to buy out their struggling firm. But the numbers didn't lie, and my track record of turning around failing companies over the past 2 years had spoken for itself. A knock on my door interrupted my thoughts. Through the glass, I saw Thaddeus standing there, his usual confident smirk firmly in place. The same smirk he'd worn when he'd told me I was lucky he'd supported my modest career aspirations during our marriage. The same smirk that had accompanied his condescending suggestion that I find something to occupy my time after our divorce. "Come in," I called out, keeping my voice professionally neutral. Time to set the stage for what would become the most satisfying board meeting in Sterling and Pierce's history. Thaddeus strode in, every inch the entitled executive in his bespoke suit and Italian leather shoes. He'd aged in the past 2 years, new lines around his eyes, a touch of gray at his temples. The responsibilities of running a struggling firm without my behind-the-scenes support had clearly taken their toll. "Sarah Chen," he said, feigning surprise as if he hadn't specifically sought me out. "I heard rumors you were consulting for the new owners, but I had to see it for myself. Quite a step up from your old analyst position." I met his gaze steadily, enjoying the fact that he had no idea just how much of a step up it really was. "Hello, Thaddeus. It's been a while." He settled himself uninvited into one of my visitor chairs, maintaining what he clearly thought was the upper hand. "Look, Sarah, I know we have history, but I need to know what's really going on with this acquisition. The board's been unusually tight-lipped, and these consultants crawling all over my departments are making my team nervous." My team. Even now, his possessiveness shone through. I made a show of checking the elegant watch on my wrist, a gift to myself after my first successful company turnaround. "The board meeting starts in 90 minutes. All your questions will be answered there." "Come on, Sarah." He leaned forward, switching to the charming tone that had once made me weak in the knees. "For old time's sake, give me something to work with here." I allowed myself a small smile. "Old time's sake? Interesting choice of words, Thaddeus. But you're right about one thing. The past has a way of influencing the present. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting to prepare for." His confidence faltered slightly at my dismissal. He wasn't used to being the one at an informational disadvantage. As he stood to leave, his gaze swept around my office, taking in the prime corner location, the expensive furnishings, the clear symbols of power he'd once told me I'd never grasp. "You've done well for yourself," he said finally, a note of uncertainty creeping into his voice. "You have no idea," I replied softly, turning my attention back to my papers. "See you at the board meeting, Thaddeus." As Thaddeus's footsteps faded down the corridor, my mind drifted back to that rainy October evening 2 years ago, the night that had shattered my world, but ultimately set me free. I'd returned early from a client meeting in Boston, hoping to surprise my husband with dinner from his favorite French bistro. Instead, I was the one who got the surprise. The elevator's polished doors had reflected my rain-soaked appearance as I ascended to the executive floor, juggling my laptop bag and the carefully packed containers of coco vin. I remember thinking how quiet the office seemed, most employees having left for the day. But a warm glow still emanated from Thaddeus's corner office, and I could hear muffled laughter through the door. "We'll tell her after the Morrison deal closes." Victoria's voice had drifted through the crack in the door. "It's better this way. She's been so focused on trying to prove herself in the analyst department, she hasn't even noticed." Sarah's always been naive that way. Thaddeus's words had cut through me like ice. Always thinking she could be more than just a pretty face in the corporate world. This way, she can focus on her charity work or whatever else makes her happy. The prenup ensures she'll be comfortable. I'd stood there, perfectly still, as they discussed dismantling my life like it was just another business transaction. The coco vin had grown cold in my hands as I listened to them plan their future. A luxury condo in the Gold Coast, weekend trips to Lake Geneva, all the things Thaddeus and I had once shared. "The board loves you, darling," Victoria had purred. "Once Sarah's out of the picture, we can finally stop pretending. And with the new position opening up." That's when I'd noticed the investment portfolio papers scattered across his desk, the ones I'd spent months analyzing and developing. My strategies, my research, my insights, all now bearing Victoria's name. The same Victoria I'd mentored when she first joined the firm, who'd sobbed in my office after a bad breakup, who'd attended my family's Thanksgiving dinner just last year. The sound of stilettos on marble snapped me back to the present. Victoria herself passed by my office, looking far less confident than she had that night. Her Louboutins, probably another gift from Thaddeus, clicked nervously against the floor as she hurried past, clutching a stack of files to her chest. I allowed myself a small smile, remembering what had happened next. Instead of causing a scene, instead of confronting them, I'd done something completely unexpected. I'd gone home, opened my laptop, and begun to plan. By sunrise, I'd mapped out every step of what would become my greatest achievement. First came the discreet meetings with rival investment firms, where I leveraged my inside knowledge of Sterling and Pierce's operations into consulting contracts. Then the careful cultivation of client relationships, many of whom had grown frustrated with Thaddeus's outdated investment strategies. Each step calculated, each move designed to strengthen my position while weakening theirs. The divorce proceedings had been quick, thanks to the same prenup Thaddeus had been so smug about. He'd assumed I'd retreat to a quiet life of luxury, perhaps write a cookbook or open a boutique. Instead, I'd used my settlement as seed money, combined with the wealth of industry connections I'd quietly built over the years. My phone buzzed with another message from the board chairman. Legal team confirms everything's in order. Shareholders are assembled. I closed my eyes, savoring the moment. In less than an hour, everyone would know that the mysterious buyer, who'd been acquiring Sterling and Pierce stock through various shell companies over the past year, was none other than the woman they'd so casually dismissed. Through the glass walls, I watched the office come alive with pre-meeting energy. Junior analysts hurried past with stacks of reports, whispered conversations erupted in corners, and nervous glances were thrown in the direction of the main conference room. The air crackled with anticipation of change. My new assistant Michael appeared at the door again. Ms. Chen, the presentation materials are ready in the conference room. And he hesitated, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Mr. Sterling's wife, Ms. Victoria, is requesting an urgent meeting. She seems quite agitated. I imagine she is, I replied, standing and smoothing my skirt. The board meeting starts in 30 minutes. She'll have her answers then, just like everyone else. As I gathered my materials, I caught my reflection. In the window. Gone was the naive woman who'd once believed in the fairy tale of corporate romance. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who'd learned that true power comes not from the men who claim to grant it, but from one's own relentless determination. The antique clock on the wall struck 9:30 a.m. In exactly 30 minutes, Thaddeus would learn that his comfortable world of corner offices and executive privileges was about to change dramatically. But first, I had one more piece to put into place, a final twist that would make this morning's revelation even sweeter. The Sterling and Pierce main conference room had always been a temple of corporate power, with its sweeping views of Lake Michigan and hand-carved mahogany table that could seat 30. As I stepped inside at precisely 9:45 a.m., the morning sun cast long shadows across the polished surface, creating an almost theatrical atmosphere for what was about to unfold. Board members filtered in, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Many had been skeptical when I'd first approached them through intermediaries, presenting evidence of the firm's declining performance under Thaddeus's leadership. But numbers don't lie, and the proof had been undeniable: a 32% drop in client retention, 3 failed expansion attempts, and a series of questionable investment strategies that had cost the firm millions. "Everything's prepared, Ms. Chen," whispered Regina Martinez, the head of legal, as she placed the final documents at each seat. She was one of the few who knew my true identity as the buyer, having handled the complex acquisition paperwork. The slight smile she gave me spoke volumes. She'd never forgotten how Thaddeus had passed her over for promotion 5 times in favor of less qualified male candidates. At 9:55 a.m., Thaddeus strode in, Victoria trailing behind him like a nervous shadow. I noticed his Italian suit was slightly wrinkled now, his usual immaculate appearance showing signs of strain. They settled into their usual seats near the head of the table, the same spots where they'd once plotted my professional demise. "Before we begin," Thaddeus announced, attempting to take control of the meeting, "I think we should discuss these rumors about departmental restructuring. As managing partner, Actually," Chairman Harrison interrupted smoothly, "we have a rather different agenda this morning." He nodded in my direction. "Ms. Chen, if you would." I stood, savoring the moment as every eye in the room turned to me. Through the glass walls, I could see other employees gathering, drawn by the unusual tension emanating from the conference room. Perfect. Let them witness what happens when underestimating someone proves to be a fatal mistake. 2 years ago, I began, my voice carrying clearly across the hushed room. Sterling and Pierce was ranked among the top 10 investment firms in the Midwest. Today, we barely make the top 50. The question is, why? I clicked the remote and the projection screen filled with graphs and charts, all meticulously documented evidence of the firm's decline. Under current management, client confidence has plummeted, innovation has stagnated, talented analysts have fled to competitors. But today, that changes. Thaddeus shifted uncomfortably in his seat as I methodically laid bare every misstep, every covered-up failure, every instance of his outdated leadership costing the firm millions. Victoria's face grew increasingly pale as she recognized some of the documentation, files she herself had helped conceal. "This is absurd!" Thaddeus finally erupted, his composure cracking. "Who do you think you are to come in here and—" "I'm the majority shareholder," I cut in smoothly, enjoying how the words stopped him mid-sentence. "Through a series of strategic acquisitions over the past year, my investment group now controls 58% of Sterling and Pierce's shares." The room erupted in murmurs. Victoria dropped her pen, the sound echoing in the sudden chaos. But I wasn't finished. "And since we're discussing identities," I continued, nodding to Regina, who began distributing a new set of documents, "let me introduce myself properly, not as Sarah Chen, the consultant, but as Sarah Chen, CEO of Phoenix Capital Partners, the firm that now owns Sterling and Pierce." The blood drained from Thaddeus's face as understanding dawned. All those mysterious stock purchases he'd dismissed, the shell companies he hadn't bothered to investigate properly, the quiet accumulation of power he'd been too arrogant to notice, all led back to the woman he'd so casually discarded. "This is impossible," he stammered, frantically flipping through the documents. "The board would never—" "The board," Chairman Harrison interjected, "voted unanimously to accept Ms. Chen's acquisition offer last month. Her track record of turning around struggling firms, combined with her intimate knowledge of our operations, made her the ideal candidate to lead Sterling and Pierce into the future." I clicked to the next slide, revealing my comprehensive restructuring plan. Effective immediately, all executive positions will be subject to performance review. Merit, not marriage or manipulation, will determine leadership roles. My eyes met Victoria's briefly. "And past indiscretions will no longer be swept under the rug." The implications weren't lost on anyone. Victoria clutched her designer handbag closer, as if it could shield her from what was coming. The same handbag, I noted with irony, that I'd helped her pick out during a shopping trip last year, when she was still playing the role of loyal employee. "This is a witch hunt," Thaddeus sputtered, but his words lacked conviction. The other board members were already nodding along with my proposals, seeing the potential for revival in my detailed plans. "No, Thaddeus," I corrected him, my voice carrying just a hint of the satisfaction I felt. "This is corporate evolution. Darwin would be proud." I turned to address the entire room. "Sterling and Pierce will return to its former glory, but under new leadership. Leadership that understands the true meaning of loyalty, innovation, and ethical business practices." The meeting continued for another hour as I outlined my vision for the company's future. Throughout it all, I maintained perfect professional composure. even as Thaddeus slumped further in his chair, the full weight of his new reality settling over him. By the time I concluded, there wasn't a person in that room who doubted that Sterling and Pierce was about to undergo a revolutionary transformation. As the board members filed out, energized by the promise of change, Thaddeus remained frozen in his seat, staring at the documents that detailed his reduced role in the company he'd once ruled. Victoria had fled the moment the meeting ended, no doubt already updating her resume. "Oh, and Thaddeus?" I paused at the door, allowing myself one small moment of personal satisfaction. "I believe you'll find your new office on the 3rd floor. Quite cozy. The view isn't quite what you're used to, but then again, change is good for the soul, don't you think?" By noon, the shockwaves of the morning's revelation had transformed Sterling and Pierce's typically subdued atmosphere into a hive of barely contained chaos. Email notifications chimed in synchronized symphony across all 7 floors as my first official company-wide memo went out. The message was clear. The old guard was out, merit would determine advancement, and every employee would have a chance to prove their worth. I stood at my office window, watching the city skyline shimmer in the midday sun while Michael orchestrated the relocation of my belongings to the CEO's suite. Below, I could see Victoria's BMW peeling out of the executive parking garage. Her 3rd trip to her car today, each time with another box of personal items. Word had spread quickly about her role in the company's decline, particularly her part in concealing Thaddeus's questionable investment strategies. "Ms. Chen?" Regina Martinez appeared at my door, a stack of personnel files balanced against her hip. "We've completed the initial audit of the executive team's decisions over the past 2 years. You're going to want to see this." The head of legal didn't bother hiding her satisfaction as she laid out document after document on my desk. "The Morrison account wasn't the only one they mishandled," she continued, pointing to a particularly damning spreadsheet. "We've found evidence of systematic favoritism in client allocation. Junior analysts with connections to Thaddeus were given the most promising accounts, while more experienced team members were sidelined." I nodded, unsurprised. "Start with the Klein portfolio. Reassign it to Diane Wong's team. She should have had it 2 years ago before Thaddeus gave it to his golf buddy's son." A knock at the door interrupted us. David Foster, head of risk. Management and one of the few executives I planned to retain stood in the doorway looking both excited and apprehensive. Ms. Chen, the trading floor is... Well, you might want to see this for yourself." The elevator ride to the trading floor was filled with meaningful glances from employees still processing the morning's events. As the doors opened to the 4th floor, the usual cacophony of trading calls and market updates was replaced by something entirely different. Unbridled enthusiasm. Analysts who had been relegated to corner desks for years were already clustering around whiteboards, sketching out investment strategies they'd been afraid to propose under Thaddeus's regime. Jenny Kang, a brilliant derivatives specialist who'd been passed over for promotion 3 times, was leading an impromptu workshop on emerging market opportunities. "The Asian markets have been signaling this shift for months," she was explaining, to a captivated audience. "If we pivot now..." She stopped mid-sentence as she noticed me, her expression a mixture of hope and lingering caution. "Continue, Jenny," I encouraged, leaning against a nearby desk. "In fact, I'd like to hear more about this strategy. Perhaps in my office at 3 p.m.? Bring your full proposal." The smile that spread across her face was worth every million I'd spent acquiring the company. This was what real leadership looked like, recognizing talent, regardless of gender, age, or office politics. "Ms. Chen?" Michael materialized at my elbow. "Mr. Sterling is having difficulty with his new office arrangement." I checked my watch, an elegant Cartier that had replaced the modest fossil watch Thaddeus had given me for our first anniversary. "Is he now?" The third floor was traditionally home to junior analysts and support staff. As I approached Thaddeus's new workspace, a modest cubicle with views of the neighboring building's brick wall, I could hear him before I saw him. "This is unacceptable," he was declaring to a thoroughly unimpressed HR representative. "Do you have any idea how many millions in client accounts I manage?" "Managed," I corrected, stepping into view. The small crowd of onlookers quickly pretended to be absorbed in their work, though their ears were clearly tuned to our interaction. "Past tense, Thaddeus. As of this morning, your client portfolio has been redistributed to more qualified team members." He spun to face me, his expensive tie askew. "You can't do this. The clients trust me, they trust the firm," I finished for him. "And speaking of trust, would you like to explain these discrepancies in the Asian market fund allocations?" I held up one of Regina's reports. "The SEC finds these sorts of irregularities fascinating." The color drained from his face. We both knew what the documents contained: evidence of his creative accounting that had masked the firm's decline while padding certain favored accounts. Nothing quite illegal enough for criminal charges, but more than enough to end his career if it came to light. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "What I've always wanted: excellence in everything we do. You have two choices, Thaddeus. Adapt to your new position, demonstrate actual value to this firm, or clear out your desk. Either way, the old way of doing business dies today." As if to underscore my point, a cheer erupted from the direction of the trading floor. Through the windows, I could see Jenny Kang's team celebrating what appeared to be a successful trade. Exactly the kind of initiative that would define the new Sterling and Pierce. "Your first performance review is in 30 days, I informed, him turning to leave. "I suggest you spend less time complaining about your office furniture and more time remembering how to actually earn your salary." As I walked away, I heard him sink into his new chair, the cheap pleather squeaking in protest. Sometimes karma needed a little help adjusting the scales of justice, and I was more than happy to assist. The first month of my leadership at Sterling and Pierce unfolded like a carefully orchestrated symphony of change. The old executive floor, once a fortress of closed doors and whispered deals, transformed into an open collaborative space bathed in natural light. Gone were the mahogany barriers and intimidating corner offices that had defined Thaddeus's era. In their place, glass-walled meeting rooms and innovative work pods encouraged the free flow of ideas and talent. "The Q1 projections are in," I announced, placing a leather-bound portfolio on my desk one morning. "You might want to sit down for this." The numbers told a story that even I hadn't anticipated. Client retention had jumped 28% since the leadership change. The Asian Markets Initiative, spearheaded by Jenny Kang's team, had already generated an additional $12 million in revenue. Most telling was the employee satisfaction survey. Morale had skyrocketed from 45% to 89% in just 4 weeks. "There's something else," Michael added, a hint of amusement in his voice. "The Wall Street Journal is running a piece on the Sterling and Pierce Renaissance. They're calling it the most dramatic corporate turnaround in Chicago's financial sector." I allowed myself a small smile, remembering Thaddeus's words from our marriage. "You don't understand high finance, darling. Stick to planning our dinner parties." Now, under my leadership, his precious firm was making headlines for all the right reasons. Speaking of Thaddeus, his adaptation to life on the third floor had been interesting. Through the daily reports from HR, I learned that he'd cycled through all 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally, grudging acceptance of his new reality. "Ms. Chen?" Amanda Zhao, our newly promoted head of talent development, appeared at my door. "The mentorship program you requested is ready to launch. We've paired 30 junior analysts with senior team members, with a focus on supporting underrepresented groups in finance." This was perhaps my proudest achievement yet. The program would ensure that no talented individual would face the barriers I had encountered. Already, we had identified promising candidates like Zara Patel, a brilliant quantitative analyst who'd been relegated to basic market research under the old regime. Excellent, I replied, scanning the pairing list. And the leadership training initiative? The first session starts today. Though, Amanda hesitated. Mr. Sterling seems to be having some difficulty with the concept of horizontal leadership. He walked out of this morning's emotional intelligence workshop. I suppressed a chuckle. Send him to my office. While waiting for Thaddeus, I reviewed the latest client acquisition reports. Our new approach to wealth management, emphasizing sustainable investment and ethical corporate governance, had attracted 3 major pension funds that had previously dismissed us as too traditional. The sound of reluctant footsteps announced Thaddeus's arrival. He stood in my doorway, a shadow of his former imperious self. The cheap polyester of his department store suit, no more bespoke Italian wool on a junior analyst's salary, seemed to physically pain him. You wanted to see me? His attempt at nonchalance failed to mask his discomfort at being summoned to the office that was once his domain. Sit down, Thaddeus. Let's discuss your participation, or lack thereof, in our new corporate culture. Initiatives. He slumped into a visitor's chair, eyeing the modernist artwork that had replaced his beloved hunting trophies. This touchy-feely nonsense isn't real business. In my day— Your day, I interrupted smoothly, saw the firm's market share drop by 40%. Now, you have a choice. Embrace our new direction and potentially earn back some responsibility, or— I let the alternative hang in the air. Before he could respond, Regina appeared with another stack of documents. Sorry to interrupt, but our audit of the European division uncovered something interesting about certain real estate investments from last year. I watched Thaddeus's face carefully as Regina laid out the evidence of more financial irregularities. His expression shifted from defiance to resignation as he realized just how thoroughly we'd investigated his tenure. The leadership workshop starts again tomorrow at 9 a.m., I informed him. I trust you'll be there, with an open mind. After. He left? Regina lingered, amusement dancing in her eyes. You know, he tried to get Victoria rehired through the back door. Apparently, she's having trouble finding work after word got out about her role in the company's mismanagement. Speaking of Victoria, I pulled up an email on my screen. She sent quite an interesting letter this morning. Seems she's willing to provide detailed documentation of certain creative accounting practices in exchange for a recommendation. Honor among thieves? Regina raised an eyebrow. More like honor among desperate former employees. I forwarded the email to legal. Add it to the file. We might need it if Thaddeus decides to resist our changes more actively. The afternoon brought a parade of positive developments. Jenny Kang's team closed a deal that would have been impossible under the old leadership structure. Zara Patel's quantitative analysis model caught the attention of Bloomberg. Even the office atmosphere had transformed. Gone was the tense silence, replaced by energetic discussions and spontaneous collaboration. As the sun set over Lake Michigan, casting long shadows across my office, I reviewed the latest architectural plans for the building renovation. The 3rd floor, where Thaddeus now dwelled, would soon house our new innovation lab, a fact I hadn't yet shared with him. Your last appointment is here, Michael announced. The potential client from Singapore? I smiled, recognizing the name. It was the same investment group that had rejected Sterling and Pierce 2 years ago, citing concerns about our outdated approach. Now they were back, drawn by our reputation for innovation and ethical leadership. Send them in, I replied, standing to greet our guests. It's time to show them the new face of Sterling and Pierce. 6 weeks into my tenure as CEO, an unexpected crisis tested the new foundation I'd built at Sterling and Pierce. The morning began with an urgent call from our Singapore office. A major client was threatening to pull their $300 million portfolio, citing concerns about destabilizing leadership changes. It didn't take long to trace the source of their anxiety. Thaddeus has been making calls, Regina reported, dropping a detailed phone log on my desk. Apparently, he's been reaching out to his old contacts, suggesting that our new direction puts their investments at risk. He's particularly focused on our Asian clientele. I leaned back in my chair, admiring the irony. The same man who'd once dismissed my interest in Asian markets as cute was now trying to use those connections against me. But Thaddeus had overlooked one crucial detail. I'd spent the past 2 years building my own relationships in Singapore, Hong Kong, and Shanghai. Ms. Chen? Michael appeared at my door, his usually calm demeanor slightly ruffled. There's a situation in the lobby. Victoria's back, and she's with a reporter from the Financial Times. Now that was interesting. Through the glass walls, I could see the trading floor buzzing with renewed energy. Nothing like potential scandal to wake up a Monday morning. I checked my calendar, already knowing it was clear. I'd learned long ago to keep space for unexpected opportunities. Send them up, I decided. And get Jenny Kang in here. It's time to show the Financial Times what real innovation looks like. While waiting, I reviewed the latest performance metrics. Despite Thaddeus's attempts at sabotage, our numbers told an impressive story. The mentorship program had already identified 15 high-potential employees who'd been overlooked by the previous management. Our new ethical investment initiative had attracted $180 million in fresh capital from socially conscious funds. Victoria swept into my office like she still owned the place, designer handbag clutched like a shield. The reporter, a sharp-eyed woman named Claire Matthews, followed with her notebook already open. I noticed Victoria had lost the confident strut she'd developed during her affair with Thaddeus. Amazing what 6 weeks of unsuccessful job hunting could do to one's posture. Sarah, Victoria started, then caught herself. Ms. Chen, I think we need to clear the air about certain misunderstandings. I gestured for them both to sit, noting how Victoria chose the chair furthest from my desk. Misunderstandings? Do you mean the mishandled client accounts, the buried market analysis reports, or the creative bookkeeping you helped conceal? Claire's pen moved rapidly across her notebook. This clearly wasn't the story Victoria had promised her. Actually, Victoria's voice wavered slightly. I wanted to set the record straight about the changes at Sterling and Pierce, about how certain traditional values are being dismissed in favor of untested methods. Before I could respond, Jenny Kang entered with our latest market analysis. Perfect timing. Ms. Chen, the Singapore fund just confirmed. They're doubling their investment. Our new risk management model impressed their board. I watched Victoria's face fall as Jenny launched into a detailed explanation of our innovative approach to Asian markets. Claire's attention shifted completely from Victoria's allegations to Jenny's brilliant analysis of emerging market opportunities. Fascinating, Claire interjected. So you're saying these new strategies weren't possible under the previous leadership? They were possible, Jenny explained, warming to her subject. They were just ignored. Under Mr. Sterling's management, innovative ideas from junior analysts were routinely dismissed, especially if they came from women or minorities. Victoria shifted uncomfortably in her chair as the conversation moved further from her planned exposé. The story was transforming before her eyes from a hit piece about corporate upheaval to a celebration of progressive leadership and measurable success. Ms. Chen, Claire turned to me. Would you say this represents a broader shift in Chicago's financial sector? I'd say it represents the future, I replied, pulling up our quarterly results on the conference room screen. Traditional firms can either adapt or become obsolete. Sterling and Pierce chose to adapt. A commotion outside drew our attention. Through the glass walls, we could see Thaddeus engaged in what appeared to be a heated argument with Regina near the elevator. His face was flushed, his new bargain rack tie askew. Should we? Claire gestured toward the scene, but I held up a hand. Watch, I suggested. The entire office had fallen silent, observing as Regina calmly handed Thaddeus a thick manila envelope. His face went from red to pale as he reviewed its contents. Those would be the documents your former assistant provided, I explained to Victoria, whose own complexion had suddenly matched Thaddeus's. Very comprehensive records. The SEC will be quite interested in some of those creative accounting methods. You can't, Victoria started, but her protest died as she realized her position. She'd come hoping to plant a story about corporate instability, only to find herself implicated in the very instability she'd helped create. The story's changed, hasn't it? I asked Claire, who was furiously taking notes. Instead of traditional, firm disrupted by new leadership. Perhaps innovation and ethics transform Chicago finance would be more accurate? The reporter's eyes gleamed with the promise of a better headline than she'd anticipated. Victoria gathered her designer bag, her attempted power play thoroughly deflated. As they left, I watched Thaddeus slump back to his third-floor cubicle, the manila envelope clutched in his defeated hands. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about building something so successful that their attempts at sabotage only highlight their own irrelevance. Ms. Chen? Michael appeared again. The Singapore team is ready for their video call, and the board wants to discuss fast-tracking the expansion plans. I smiled, turning back to the business of building something greater than revenge. Tell them I'll be right there. After all, we're just getting started. 3 months after the Financial Times article hit the press, Sterling and Pierce had become a case study in corporate transformation. The piece, titled Rising from the Ashes, How Ethical Leadership Revolutionized a Chicago Institution, had sparked a wave of change across the financial district. Competing firms scrambled to replicate our success, though few understood that. Our transformation went far deeper than surface-level diversity initiatives and modern office designs. I was reviewing applications for our expanded mentorship program when an unexpected name appeared in my inbox. Thaddeus had submitted a proposal for improving our junior analyst training program. Even more surprisingly, it was good. Thoughtful, detailed, and focused on developing talent rather than exploiting it. His performance reviews have taken an interesting turn, Michael noted, setting down my afternoon coffee. He hasn't missed a single leadership workshop since the SEC documentation surfaced, and his team actually requested he stay on as their supervisor. The irony wasn't lost on me. The man who'd once ruled through fear and manipulation had finally learned to lead through genuine respect. His third-floor cubicle, once a symbol of his downfall, had become a hub for emerging talent-seeking guidance on risk assessment strategies. Ms. Chen? Amanda Zhao appeared at my door. The Harvard Business Review team is here for the interview about our mentorship initiative, and you might want to see this first. She handed me a glossy magazine, Business Week's. Latest issue featured Sterling and Pierce in their Companies to Watch section. The transformation of our firm had exceeded even my most ambitious projections. The innovation lab on the third floor, now fully operational, had produced 3 groundbreaking investment models. Zara Patel's quantum computing application for market analysis had caught the attention of Silicon Valley venture capitalists. Jenny Kang's team had expanded beyond Asian markets, establishing Sterling and Pierce as a global leader in sustainable investment strategies. There's something else, Regina added, joining us with her ever-present legal briefcase. Victoria's new tell-all book deal fell through. Apparently, publishers are more interested in success stories than bitter exposés. I smiled, remembering Victoria's final attempt at relevance, a poorly conceived memoir promising to reveal the dark side of female leadership. The manuscript had died a quiet death when fact-checkers discovered our documented success metrics. A knock at my door interrupted our discussion. Claire Matthews from the Financial Times stood there, this time with a different agenda. Sorry to drop by unannounced, but I thought you should know. Thaddeus just gave an interesting interview to Bloomberg. She pulled up the video on her tablet. There was my ex-husband, seated at his modest desk, speaking with unexpected humility. My greatest failure wasn't losing control of Sterling and Pierce, he admitted to the interviewer. It was failing to recognize the talent right in front of me. Sometimes it takes losing everything to understand what really matters in business and in life. Well, Claire observed, that's quite a change from the man who tried to sabotage your Singapore contracts. Before I could respond, Diane Wong from Client Relations burst in. Ms. Chen, the European Union's largest pension fund just committed $2 billion to our sustainable investment portfolio. They specifically cited our ethical leadership and innovative approach. The news rippled through the office like electricity. Through the glass walls, I watched our teams celebrate, veteran traders hugging rookie analysts, programmers high-fiving investment managers. This was what real success looked like. Not just profits, but people genuinely excited to come to work. Sarah? A familiar voice drew my attention back to the door. My mother stood there, elegant in her business attire. As one of Asia's leading investment bankers, she'd been my secret weapon in rebuilding connections with Eastern markets after Thaddeus's attempted sabotage. Mom, I thought you were in Hong Kong until next week. She smiled, stepping into my office. And miss my daughter's feature in Asian Finance Quarterly? Not a chance. She placed the magazine on my desk, its cover showing the Hong Kong skyline with the headline, The Future of Finance, How Asian Markets Are Embracing Sterling, and Pierce's revolutionary model. Looking at the magazine, I remembered all those family dinners where Thaddeus had patronizingly explained basic market concepts to my mother, completely unaware that she'd helped structure some of Asia's largest deals. She'd simply smiled and nodded, teaching me through example that true power doesn't need to announce itself. Ms. Chen? Michael interrupted apologetically. The World Economic Forum called. They'd like you to keynote their panel on transformative leadership in modern finance. As I processed this news, I noticed Thaddeus through the glass walls, earnestly mentoring a young analyst. He'd finally learned what I'd known all along, that real leadership isn't about power over others, but about empowering others to succeed. One more thing, Regina added with a slight smirk. The executive coaching firm that Victoria tried to start just filed for bankruptcy. Apparently, her unique approach to climbing the corporate ladder didn't attract many clients. I turned to the window, watching the Chicago skyline shimmer in the afternoon sun. The view reminded me of all those nights I'd spent plotting my return, never imagining that my revenge would evolve into something far more meaningful, a genuine revolution in how business could be done. Mom, I said, turning back to my mother, would you like to sit in on our global strategy meeting? We're discussing expansion into emerging markets, and I could use your insights. As we walked to the conference room, I caught my reflection in the glass walls. The woman who had once sought revenge had found something far more valuable, the power to create real, lasting change. And that, I realized, was the sweetest victory of all. 1 year after taking control of Sterling and Pierce, I stood at the podium during our annual shareholders meeting, reflecting on a transformation that had exceeded everyone's expectations. The packed auditorium at the Chicago Financial Center buzzed with anticipation as I prepared to announce our year-end results. When we began this journey, I addressed the crowd. Many questioned whether traditional finance could adapt to modern leadership principles. Today, our numbers tell a different story. The projection screen behind me displayed metrics that even I had once thought impossible. Client portfolios up 2 to 18%, employee retention at 94%, and market share expanded into 15 new countries. But the most significant changes couldn't be captured in percentages and profit margins. Ms. Chen, Michael whispered, approaching the podium, The London Stock Exchange just confirmed. They're announcing our listing tomorrow morning. I nodded, suppressing a smile. The timing was perfect. As I continued my presentation, I noticed Thaddeus sitting in the middle section, actually taking notes. The past year had transformed him in ways neither of us had anticipated. His team on the third floor had recently developed a groundbreaking risk assessment model that had attracted attention from MIT's finance department. Innovation isn't just about technology, I continued, clicking to the next slide. It's about creating an environment where every voice matters, where success is measured not just in profits, but in human potential realized. The doors at the back of the auditorium opened quietly as Catherine Zhang, CEO of Asia's largest investment consortium, slipped in. Her presence confirmed the rumors that had been circulating through financial circles. Sterling and Pierce was about to become a major player in the Eastern markets. The future of finance, I gestured to our global expansion map, requires more than traditional thinking. It demands courage to challenge established norms, wisdom to learn from diverse perspectives, and integrity to maintain ethical standards even when it's difficult. From my position on stage, I could see Regina conferring with our legal team. They'd just concluded negotiations with 3 major European pension funds who'd been drawn to our ethical investment framework. The same framework Thaddeus had once dismissed as idealistic nonsense was now being studied at leading business schools. After the presentation, during the reception, an unexpected conversation emerged in the corner of the grand ballroom. Thaddeus was earnestly discussing sustainable investment strategies with a group of young analysts from our Mumbai office. The man who'd once refused to consider perspectives beyond his narrow worldview was now actively seeking insights from newcomers. Quite a change, observed Claire Matthews, who'd returned to write a follow-up piece for the Financial Times. Both. In him and in the industry as a whole. She was right. Our success had sparked a revolution in Chicago's financial district. Competing firms were scrambling to replicate our model, though few understood that our transformation went beyond surface-level changes. Ms. Chen, Amanda approached with an urgent expression. Victoria just published a LinkedIn post. You might want to see this. I checked my phone, expecting another attempt at undermining our success. Instead, I found something surprising, a public apology. Victoria had written a candid reflection on her past actions, acknowledging her role in perpetuating toxic corporate culture and expressing genuine remorse. Well, Regina remarked, reading over my shoulder, people really can change when they're forced to confront their choices. The evening continued with a series of announcements that solidified Sterling and Pierce's position as a global leader in ethical finance. Our partnership with Catherine Zhang's consortium would open doors throughout Asia. The London listing would attract European institutional investors. But the announcement that drew the most attention was our new Global Leadership Institute. The institute, I explained to the assembled press, will provide mentorship and support to emerging leaders from underrepresented groups in finance. We're committed to ensuring that the next generation of financial leaders reflects the diverse world they serve. As the evening wound down, I found myself alone with Thaddeus near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. Silence between us was no longer charged with animosity, but with a strange sort of understanding. I never thanked you, he said quietly, watching the city shimmer below. For what? For showing me what real leadership looks like? For proving me wrong in the best possible way? He turned to face me. The woman I dismissed as just a trophy wife built something I never could because you understood what I didn't. That true success comes from lifting others up, not pushing them down. Before I could respond, Michael appeared with urgent news. The Singapore Sovereign Wealth Fund just committed $5 billion to our new ethical investment platform. They want to make it the standard for Asian markets. I excused myself, leaving Thaddeus to his reflections. As I moved through the crowded ballroom, I caught glimpses of the future we'd built. Jenny Kang discussing quantum trading algorithms with MIT professors, Zara Patel explaining our new risk models to European regulators, and dozens of young professionals who would never face the barriers I had encountered. Later that night, as the last guests departed, I stood in my office looking out over the Chicago skyline. The woman who had walked into Sterling and Pierce seeking revenge had found something far more valuable: the power to create lasting change. My phone buzzed with a message from my mother in Hong Kong. "Saw your London Stock Exchange announcement. Your father would have been so proud." I smiled, remembering his words when I was a little girl. Success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. The night grew deeper as I reviewed our plans for the coming year. The revenge I'd once sought had transformed into a revolution that would outlast any personal vindication. In the end, the best revenge wasn't just about proving Thaddeus wrong. It was about proving that there was a better way to lead, to succeed, and to transform an industry. And that revolution was just beginning. 18 months after taking control of Sterling and Pierce, I found myself back in the same conference room where it had all begun. This time, however, I wasn't plotting revenge or orchestrating takeovers. I was reviewing applications for our second cohort of the Global Leadership Institute. 500 ambitious professionals from 37 countries, each hoping to be part of the revolution we'd started. "The World Economic Forum called again," Michael announced, entering with his trademark precision timing. "They want to feature Sterling and Pierce in their special report on companies redefining capitalism. Apparently, our ethical investment model has caught the attention of several sovereign wealth funds." I smiled, remembering how Thaddeus had once mocked my suggestion that ethical investing could be profitable. Now, our sustainable portfolio was outperforming traditional investments by 42%, and even our competitors were rushing to adopt similar principles. "Ms. Chen?" A new voice interrupted my thoughts. Lily Chen, no relation, our recently appointed head of Asia-Pacific operations, stood in the doorway. At 28, she represented everything our transformation had made possible: brilliant, innovative, and empowered to lead regardless of age or gender. "The Beijing office just closed the Zhang merger," Lily reported, her eyes sparkling with triumph. "We're now the largest ethical investment firm in Asia." The news rippled through the office, but my attention was drawn to an unexpected scene unfolding on the third floor. Through the glass walls, I could see Thaddeus leading a workshop on corporate ethics for new employees. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, but his transformation had proven genuine. "His new book is actually quite good," Regina commented, following my gaze. She placed a copy on my desk. "The Power of Humility: Lessons in Leadership and Redemption." The foreword, surprisingly, had been written by Victoria. "Speaking of unexpected developments," Regina continued, "have you seen this?" She handed me her tablet displaying an article from Business Insider. Victoria had launched a successful consulting firm specializing in corporate culture transformation, using her own experience as a cautionary tale. "Life has a way of teaching us what we need to learn," I mused, remembering my own journey from seeking revenge to finding purpose. The afternoon brought a parade of visitors through my office. Catherine Zhang arrived from Hong Kong to discuss expanding our Leadership Institute across Asia. Claire Matthews stopped by for an exclusive on our latest innovation, a quantum computing platform that could predict market ethics violations before they occurred. "Ms. Chen?" Amanda appeared with urgent news. "The United Nations just announced their new financial ethics framework. They're using our model as the global standard." As I processed this information, Jenny Kang burst in, her usual calm demeanor charged with excitement. "The algorithm worked! We just prevented a major market manipulation attempt by identifying ethical breaches in real time. The SEC is calling it a game changer." Through the glass walls, I watched our office hum with purposeful energy. The trading floor once a testosterone-fueled arena of aggressive competition, had transformed into a collaborative space where diverse teams worked together to create sustainable value. My phone buzzed with a message from my mother. "Darling, the Hong Kong exchange is ready to announce. Shall we proceed?" Our expansion into Asian markets had become a family affair, with my mother's decades of experience proving invaluable in navigating complex cultural dynamics. "Green light," I texted back, just as Zara Patel arrived with our latest innovation report. Her quantum risk assessment model had not only revolutionized our industry, but was being adapted for healthcare and climate change predictions. "There's something else," Michael added, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Remember that old boys' club that rejected your membership 3 years ago? They've unanimously elected you as their first female chairperson." I declined the offer with a polite note. Some victories weren't worth the compromise of principles we'd worked so hard to establish. The day's final surprise came during our evening executive meeting. Thaddeus had submitted a comprehensive proposal for expanding our ethical investment framework to emerging markets. The same man who'd once dismissed my career ambitions had become one of our strongest advocates for progressive leadership. "It's not just about profits anymore," he explained to our global team via video conference. "It's about creating lasting positive impact." The sincerity in his voice reflected how far we'd all come from those days of office politics and personal vendettas. As night fell over Chicago's financial district, I stood in my office watching the city lights flicker to life. The revenge I'd initially sought had evolved into something far more meaningful, a fundamental reimagining of what success could mean in the modern financial world. My reflection in the window caught my eye. The woman who had once been dismissed as just a trophy wife had built something revolutionary. But the real victory wasn't in proving Thaddeus wrong. It was in proving that business could be both profitable and principled, powerful and ethical. "Ms. Chen?" Michael's voice interrupted my reflections one final time. "Tomorrow's schedule includes the launch of our new Environmental Impact Fund, 2 panel discussions on ethical leadership, and—" He paused, smiling slightly. "Your acceptance speech for the Global Finance Leader of the Year award." I nodded, turning back to the city lights. The story that had begun with betrayal and revenge had transformed into a blueprint for change. Sterling and Pierce was no longer just a company. It was a movement, proving that the greatest revenge isn't in destroying what hurt you, but in building something better in its place. And somewhere in this gleaming city, a young professional was probably being told they'd never succeed, that their dreams were too ambitious, their goals too lofty, but now they had a different story to inspire them. A story that proved success isn't about who you know or who tries to hold you back. It's about who you become in spite of them, and more importantly, who you help others become along the way. 2 years to the day after I took control of Sterling and Pierce, I sat in the private dining room of the Ritz-Carlton, surrounded by an unexpected gathering. The Financial Women's Association of Chicago had organized a special dinner to mark the EA anniversary of what they called the Sterling and Pierce Revolution. But the real surprise wasn't the event, it was the guest list. "I have a confession to make." Thaddeus addressed the room, standing at the end of the elegant table. 2 years ago, I was the problem Sarah Chen came to solve. I was the obstacle she had to overcome. And today, I'm honored to announce that our third-floor innovation hub will be renamed the Chen Institute for Ethical Leadership. The announcement drew appreciative murmurs from the assembled guests. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Chicago's financial district glittered like a constellation of stars, each light representing a story of transformation. "The numbers tell an extraordinary story," Claire Matthews observed, reviewing her notes for her upcoming book, The Chen Effect: How One Woman's Revenge Revolutionized Global Finance. "But what fascinates me is the ripple effect across the industry." She was right. In the past year alone, 17 major financial institutions had adopted our ethical investment framework. The Sterling and Pierce model was being taught at leading business schools worldwide. Even the most traditional firms were scrambling to replicate our success. Ms. Chen? Michael appeared discreetly at my elbow. The Tokyo Exchange just opened, and our new ethical AI trading platform caught its first potential violation. The Japanese regulators are calling it a breakthrough in market protection. The platform had been Jenny Kang's latest innovation, combining quantum computing with ethical algorithms to prevent market manipulation before it could occur. It represented everything we stood for, using power to protect, not exploit. Victoria, who'd been quietly observing from the corner, stepped forward. Her new book, From Complicit to Conscious, A Journey to Ethical Leadership, had become required, reading at several business schools. "I've been invited to speak at Harvard Business School," she announced. "They want me to discuss the importance of ethical choices in corporate culture." The irony wasn't lost on anyone, but her transformation had proven as genuine as Thaddeus's. Her consulting firm now specialized in helping companies identify and correct toxic workplace cultures, using her own experience as a powerful teaching tool. "There's more," Regina added, her legal pad filled with the day's developments. The EU's Financial Ethics Commission just unanimously adopted our governance framework as their new standard. They're calling it the Chen Principles. I smiled, remembering how Thaddeus had once dismissed my suggestions about ethical governance as naive idealism. Now, those same principles were reshaping global finance. "The real victory," my mother observed, joining our conversation, "isn't in the numbers or the accolades. It's in the lives changed." She gestured toward Lily Chen, who was deep in discussion with Catherine Zhang about expanding our mentorship program across Asia. A commotion at the door drew our attention. Zara Patel burst in, tablet in hand. "The quantum model just predicted and prevented a major market crisis in emerging markets. The World Bank is calling it the first real-time ethical intervention in financial history." The news rippled through the room, but my attention was caught by a quieter scene. Through the window, I could see the lights on in our office building. The third floor, now the Chen Institute, was still busy with young professionals attending evening workshops on ethical leadership. "Your father would be proud," my mother whispered, following my gaze. "He always said success isn't measured by what you gain, but by what you give back." The evening progressed with a series of announcements that highlighted how far we'd come. The Global Leadership Institute was expanding to 50 countries. Our ethical investment funds had outperformed traditional portfolios by 278%. The Sterling and Pierce Foundation had funded scholarships for 1,000 underprivileged students pursuing careers in finance. "Ms. Chen?" Amanda appeared with breaking news. "The Nobel Committee just announced their new category for ethical innovation in economics. They want you to chair the selection committee." As I processed this information, I noticed Thaddeus in deep conversation with a group of young analysts. He was sharing lessons learned, not from his days of power, but from his journey to redemption. His new book's royalties were going entirely to fund women's education in finance. "Life has a way of teaching us what we need to learn," he remarked later, as the evening wound down. "I came to Sterling and Pierce thinking I knew everything about success. You showed me I knew nothing about true leadership." The night grew deeper as the city lights reflected off the dark waters of Lake Michigan. The revenge I'd once sought had evolved into something far more powerful, a movement that would outlast any personal victory. "Your next appointment is with the UN Secretary General," Michael reminded me as the event concluded. "They want to discuss implementing the Chen Principles globally." I stood at the window, watching our office building glow like a beacon in the night. The story that had begun with betrayal had transformed into a blueprint for change. Sterling and Pierce wasn't just a company anymore. It was proof that the greatest power isn't in destroying what hurt you, but in creating something that helps others rise. And somewhere in this vast city, another person was being told they weren't enough, that their dreams were too big, their ambitions too bold. But now they had a different story to guide them, a story that proved success isn't about revenge or power. It's about transformation, about turning pain into purpose, and about building a legacy that lifts others as you climb. In the end, that was the sweetest victory of all. After leaving Sterling and Pierce that fateful night, I spent 3 months meticulously planning in my Lakeshore Drive apartment. The space that had once been our shared home became my war room, walls covered with financial data, market analyses, and competitor profiles. Every surface told a story of potential weakness. In Thaddeus's empire, these quarterly reports don't add up, observed Eleanor Way, my former mentor from business school, as she studied the documents spread across my dining room table. A retired forensic accountant with a legendary reputation for spotting financial irregularities, she'd been the first person I called after my divorce. Look at the European division's numbers, Eleanor pointed to a seemingly innocuous spreadsheet. They're reporting 15% growth, but their operational costs are suspiciously low for that level of expansion. Either they've discovered magic, or they're cooking the books, I finished, adding another note to my growing dossier. Each discrepancy I uncovered was another crack in Thaddeus's facade of success. My laptop pinged with an encrypted message from Marcus Blackwood, a hedge fund manager who'd been quietly feeding me information about Sterling and Pierce's deteriorating client relationships. Thompson Group is pulling their portfolio next week. Word is they're tired of Thaddeus's outdated investment strategies. I cross-referenced this information with my database of dissatisfied clients. A pattern was emerging, one that would prove crucial in my takeover strategy. But first, I needed to understand every aspect of the company's operations. "Your 9 a.m. is here," announced Rachel Liu, my newly hired assistant. I'd specifically chosen her for her background in corporate intelligence and her network of connections throughout Chicago's financial district. Derek Morrison, former head of compliance at Sterling and Pierce, settled into my home office. He'd left the firm 6 months before my divorce, disgusted by what he'd witnessed. "The ethical violations go deeper than anyone realizes," he revealed, pulling out a thumb drive. "I kept copies of everything. I just needed someone with the courage to use them." The drive contained a goldmine of information, buried audit reports, dismissed whistleblower complaints, evidence of systematic discrimination in promotion practices. Each document was another piece in my carefully constructed puzzle. "We need to move carefully," advised Samantha Rodriguez, my lawyer and longtime friend from Harvard Law. "Build an ironclad case before making any moves." The SEC would be very interested in some of these findings, but timing is everything. I spent weeks building a shadow network of allies. Diana Chen, no relation, a rising star in Asian markets, provided crucial insights into expansion opportunities Thaddeus had arrogantly ignored. James O'Connor, a veteran trader frustrated by the firm's stagnation, offered detailed analysis of operational inefficiencies. "The tech infrastructure is a joke," reported Kevin Park, a brilliant systems analyst I'd recruited from Silicon Valley. "They're running on platforms from the last decade. One good quantum computing implementation could revolutionize their entire trading system." My dining room transformed into a command center. One wall tracked potential board members who might support a takeover. Another monitored stock prices and trading patterns. A third mapped out the company's client relationships, highlighting opportunities for intervention. "Look at this," Rachel interrupted one evening, bringing in a confidential report from our sources inside Sterling and Pierce. "They just lost the Martinez account. That's the third major client this quarter." I added the information to my growing database. Each client departure weakened Thaddeus's position and strengthened mine. But I needed more than just opportunity. I needed a completely new vision for the company. "The future isn't just in profits," I explained to my assembled team one night. It's in ethical innovation, sustainable practices, and genuine leadership. The irony wasn't lost on me that Thaddeus's greatest weakness was his inability to see beyond traditional power structures. Eleanor helped me construct a detailed financial model, demonstrating how ethical investment practices could actually increase profitability. Diana developed a comprehensive plan for Asian market expansion. Kevin designed a revolutionary trading platform that would set new industry standards. "We're not just planning a takeover," Samantha observed, reviewing our progress. "We're designing a complete corporate transformation." My mother's voice echoed in my mind. Success isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about building something they could never imagine. Each late night, every detailed analysis, all the careful networking was leading to something bigger than revenge. "Ms. Chen?" Rachel appeared with fresh intelligence. "Victoria just made another mistake. She accidentally copied the wrong people on an email discussing some creative accounting in the London office." I added this to my evidence file, remembering how Victoria had once conspired with Thaddeus in that corner office. Now her carelessness would help bring about their downfall. As autumn turned to winter, my strategy took final shape. Shell companies were established, preliminary talks with board members initiated, and key personnel identified for the transition. Every detail was mapped out, every contingency planned for. "The pieces are in place," Eleanor confirmed one snowy evening, reviewing our master plan. "The question is, are you ready for what comes next?" I looked at my reflection in the window, barely recognizing the woman who had emerged from the ashes of betrayal. The naive analyst who had once sought Thaddeus's approval was gone. In her place stood someone who understood that true power comes from vision, preparation, and unwavering determination. "I'm not just ready," I replied, watching snowflakes swirl against the Chicago skyline. "I'm going to rewrite the rules of the game." My first move against Sterling and Pierce came through an unexpected channel, the Singapore Sovereign Wealth Fund. While Thaddeus focused on his usual golf partnerships and old boys network, I had spent months cultivating relationships with Asian investors who recognized the untapped potential in ethical finance. "The initial transfer is complete," announced Wei Chen, my contact at the Singapore Fund, during a secure video call. "We've acquired 8% of Sterling and Pierce through various shell companies. Thaddeus's team hasn't noticed the pattern yet." The acquisition had been masterfully orchestrated through a complex web of investment vehicles, each seemingly unrelated, but all leading back to my newly established Phoenix Capital Partners. The beauty of the strategy lay in its simplicity. Thaddeus was so convinced of his own supremacy that he never thought to look closely at his new investors. "Latest intelligence from the trading floor," Rachel reported, setting down her morning briefing. "The Thompson account team is in chaos. Their lead analyst quit this morning. Apparently, Thaddeus berated her in front of clients for suggesting a more progressive investment strategy." Perfect timing. I reached for my phone, dialing a number I'd been holding for just such a me. Opportunity. "Patricia," Sarah Chen. "Remember that conversation we had about innovative portfolio management? I think it's time we discussed how Phoenix Capital could better serve Thompson's interests." By the end of the day, Thompson's $2.8 billion portfolio had quietly shifted to my management. It was my first major victory, not just in acquiring assets, but in proving that ethical leadership could attract serious institutional investors. "The board is starting to ask questions," Derek Morrison informed me during our weekly secure meeting. "The Q3 numbers are worse than expected, and your strategic acquisitions are making some of them nervous. Andrews and Martinez have already reached out through back channels." I smiled, remembering how these same board members had once dismissed my proposals for modernizing Sterling and Pierce's investment approach. Now they were secretly seeking alternatives to Thaddeus's leadership. "Ms. Chen?" Kevin Park appeared in my office doorway, excitement evident in his usually calm demeanor. The prototype trading platform is ready. We just ran a simulation that showed a 47% improvement in ethical compliance while maintaining aggressive growth targets. The platform represented everything Sterling and Pierce could become under proper leadership: innovative, ethical, and highly profitable. I had invested heavily in its development, knowing it would be a key factor in convincing traditional investors to support my vision. Send the simulation results to Eleanor, I instructed, and get ready for Phase 2. Phase 2 involved targeting Sterling and Pierce's most vulnerable asset, its reputation. Through carefully placed articles and strategic information sharing with key financial journalists, we began highlighting the firm's declining innovation and questionable practices. The Financial Times piece just dropped, Samantha announced, forwarding the article to my tablet. 3 former employees went on record about the toxic culture under Thaddeus's leadership. The stock price is already responding. The timing coincided perfectly with our next move. As Sterling and Pierce's stock price dipped, my network of shell companies increased their purchasing activity. Each small decline presented another opportunity to strengthen our position. Victoria's getting careless, Rachel noted, reviewing our daily intelligence briefing. She left confidential documents visible during a video call with London. Our sources confirmed they contain evidence of significant compliance violations. I added this information to our growing dossier. Victoria's overconfidence would prove as useful as Thaddeus's arrogance in dismantling their power structure. The Asian Markets Division is imploding, Diana reported during our evening strategy session. 3 major clients have privately expressed interest in moving their portfolios to Phoenix. They're impressed by our quantum-based ethical trading platform. Each small victory built upon the others, creating momentum that would prove unstoppable. While Thaddeus focused on maintaining his image as the king of Chicago finance, I was systematically dismantling his kingdom from within. The SEC has opened an informal inquiry, Samantha revealed, reviewing her legal briefings. Those compliance issues we highlighted through back channels caught their attention. Thaddeus doesn't know yet, but the board chairman was quietly interviewed yesterday. By month's end, Phoenix Capital had accumulated 23% of Sterling and Pierce's shares through our various fronts. The board was increasingly restless, and client confidence in Thaddeus's leadership was eroding daily. We've reached the tipping point, Eleanor observed during our final strategy review. The next phase will be critical. Are you ready to step out of the shadows? I walked to the window of my temporary office, watching the sun set over Lake Michigan. In the reflection, I saw not just my own transformation, but the blueprint for transforming an entire industry. Tomorrow, I replied, we remind everyone that true power isn't in maintaining the status quo. It's in having the courage to change it. As night fell over Chicago's financial district, I reviewed our progress. Each small victory had brought us closer to the ultimate goal. But more importantly, each step had proven that ethical leadership wasn't just morally right. It was good business. The pieces were falling into place faster than even I had anticipated. Soon, Thaddeus would learn that while he had been playing checkers, I had been orchestrating a game of chess, one where every move served a greater purpose than mere revenge. Building a network strong enough to challenge Thaddeus's empire required more than just financial strategy. It demanded a complete reimagining of corporate alliances. My breakthrough came during the annual Asian Investment Summit in Hong Kong, where I'd been invited to speak about ethical finance innovation. Your quantum trading platform is revolutionary, remarked Dr. Mei Zhang, head of China's largest technology investment fund, as we shared tea in her private office overlooking Victoria Harbor. But what interests me more is your vision for corporate governance reform. The meeting hadn't been coincidental. Dr. Zhang's fund controlled significant voting shares in several of Sterling and Pierce's key Asian partners. Her support would be crucial in the coming transformation. Traditional firms are dying, Dr. Zhang, I explained, pulling up our latest market analysis. They're so focused on maintaining old power structures that they've missed the fundamental shifts in global finance. Her eyes sparkled with interest as I detailed how our ethical trading platform had outperformed conventional systems by 58% in recent trials. "Send me the full proposal," she said finally, "and call me May. I think we'll be working together quite closely." Back in Chicago, another key alliance was forming through an unexpected channel. Alexander Petrov, whose family controlled Eastern Europe's largest pension fund, reached out through intermediaries after hearing about our ethical investment framework. "Your former husband refused to even consider our proposals for sustainable investment," he revealed during a secure video call. "Called it, what was his phrase? Ah yes, tree-hugger economics." His laugh held a note of steel. "Last quarter, sustainable investments outperformed his traditional portfolio by 31%. Rachel interrupted with urgent news. "Ms. Chen, Judge Maria? Rodriguez just confirmed for the advisory board. Her expertise in international financial law will be invaluable when the SEC investigation intensifies," I finished. Each new alliance was another piece in our expanding puzzle. The next breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Harrison Williams, Sterling and Pierce's longtime head of risk management, requested a discreet meeting at his Lake Forest estate. "I've been watching your moves," he said, pouring aged scotch, as we sat in his wood-paneled study. "The shell companies, the strategic acquisitions, the ethical trading platform. You're not just planning a takeover, you're plotting a revolution." His next words surprised me. "I want in. Thaddeus's leadership is driving us toward disaster, but few have the courage to challenge him. You do. And you have something he never had, a vision beyond your own ego." Harrison's support would prove crucial. As risk management head, he had detailed knowledge of every questionable decision Thaddeus had made over the past 5 years. "The institutional investors are getting nervous," reported Diana during our weekly strategy session. "Morgan's group, from London, Schmidt's team in Frankfurt, they're all watching Sterling and Pierce's declining performance metrics with growing concern." Perfect timing for our next move. I'd spent months cultivating relationships with key institutional investors, showing them detailed projections of how our ethical investment approach could revolutionize their returns. "Ms. Chen?" Kevin appeared with his development team. "The quantum platform just passed its final stress test. We incorporated Dr. Zhang's suggestions about algorithmic ethics, and the results are extraordinary. The platform had become our secret weapon, proof that ethical investment could be both profitable and technologically advanced. Each demonstration attracted more supporters to our cause." "The whistleblowers are ready," Samantha advised, reviewing her legal briefs. 3 former executives willing to testify about Thaddeus's systematic suppression of innovation and ethical concerns. Their evidence corroborates everything in Harrison's files. But our most powerful alliance came through a chance encounter at the Chicago Symphony Orchestra's annual gala. Elizabeth Sterling, Thaddeus's own mother and a significant shareholder, approached me during intermission. "My dear," she said, her voice carrying decades of old money authority, "I've been following your work with great interest. Perhaps we should discuss the future of the family business over lunch?" The lunch revealed something surprising. Elizabeth had been quietly disappointed in her son's leadership for years. Sterling and Pierce was built on innovation and integrity, she explained at the Drake Hotel's Palm Court. Thaddeus forgot that. He thought power was about control rather than vision. By month's end, our coalition had grown beyond anything Thaddeus could have imagined. Dr. Zhang's technology fund had committed to a strategic partnership. Judge Rodriguez's expertise strengthened our legal position. Harrison's risk management insights revealed new opportunities for ethical reform. "The pieces are almost in place," Eleanor observed during our final review. "But there's one more alliance you need to secure." She was right. The most crucial partnership would come from within Sterling and Pierce itself. the talented individuals who had been suppressed under Thaddeus's regime. Initiate the employee outreach program, I instructed Rachel. It's time to show them there's an alternative to toxic leadership. As night fell over Chicago, I reviewed our growing network of allies. Each partnership represented not just strategic advantage, but a shared vision for transforming corporate culture. The revolution we were building would be sustained not by one person's revenge, but by a coalition committed to proving that ethical leadership could reshape global finance. Your father always said, my mother reminded me during our evening call, that true power comes not from what you can control, but from what you can inspire others to create. Looking at the web of alliances we'd built, I realized that every partnership, every coalition, every shared vision was creating something far more powerful than mere corporate takeover. We were building the future of ethical finance, one alliance at a time. The breakthrough in our evidence gathering came from an unlikely source, Brandon Torres, a junior IT specialist at Sterling & Pierce, who had been systematically overlooked for promotion despite his exceptional skills. He reached out through our anonymous whistleblower portal with information that would prove invaluable. You need to see this, Rachel announced, rushing into my office one morning. Brandon found something in the archived server logs, evidence of systematic data manipulation in the European division's reporting. The logs revealed a pattern of altered numbers, coincidentally matching the suspicious growth figures Eleanor had identified months ago. But Brandon had discovered something even more damning, a hidden email server where Thaddeus and Victoria coordinated their creative accounting. The timestamp patterns are fascinating, observed Dr. Isabel Kumar, our recently recruited forensic data analyst. See how the modifications always occur after hours, usually following board reporting deadlines? Her fingers flew across the keyboard, constructing a timeline of alterations that perfectly matched our suspected fraud patterns. Meanwhile, another source emerged from within Sterling & Pierce's London office. Charlotte Webb, head of compliance, for European operations, had been keeping detailed records of every questionable decision she'd been forced to approve. I've been documenting everything for 3 years, Charlotte revealed during a secured video call. Originally as protection for myself, but now... She paused, her expression hardening. Now I want to ensure real change happens. Her evidence proved explosive. Detailed records of how Thaddeus had systematically undermined ethical investment initiatives while promoting high-risk, questionably legal strategies. The documentation was meticulous, including dates, witnesses, and exact dollar amounts. This is better than we hoped, Samantha remarked, reviewing Charlotte's files. Combined with Brandon's server logs and Harrison's risk management records, we have an airtight case of systematic malfeasance. But the most damaging evidence came from an unexpected quarter. Lisa Chen, my mother's longtime friend and a senior partner at one of Asia's largest accounting firms, discovered a pattern in Sterling & Pierce's international transactions. Look at these wire transfers, Lisa pointed out during a late-night review session. Every major deal under Thaddeus's leadership includes a small percentage diverted through a series of shell companies. When you trace them back, the trail led to a network of offshore accounts, each carefully hidden but all eventually connecting to holding companies controlled by Thaddeus and his inner circle. It was sophisticated money laundering disguised as legitimate business expenses. Ms. Chen? Kevin interrupted with urgent news. The quantum platform just flagged something interesting in the real-time trading data. There's a pattern of microtransactions that doesn't match any legitimate trading strategy. Working through the night, Kevin's team uncovered evidence of front-running. Thaddeus's traders were using insider information to profit from client trades. The quantum platform's ethical algorithms had detected what traditional compliance systems missed. This explains the unexplained profits in their high-frequency trading division, Eleanor observed, reviewing the data. They weren't just betraying client trust, they were systematically exploiting it. Judge Rodriguez, reviewing our growing evidence file, was particularly interested in the international implications. This crosses multiple jurisdictions, she noted. The SEC will be just the beginning. These violations would interest regulators in London, Singapore, and Frankfurt. The evidence gathering took an unexpected turn when Victoria's former assistant reached out through intermediaries. Sophia Martinez had kept copies of every questionable document she'd been asked to misfile over the past 2 years. I knew something wasn't right, Sophia explained, handing over a carefully organized flash drive. But I never had proof until I saw the patterns in their private communications. The drive contained hundreds of damaging exchanges between Thaddeus and Victoria, including discussions of how to hide losses, manipulate reports, and mislead regulators. Their arrogance in assuming no one would ever discover their schemes was staggering. They got sloppy, Regina observed, organizing the evidence into categories. Success made them careless. They never imagined anyone would piece it all together. Dr. Zhang's tech team, analyzing the data, discovered another layer of deception. The trading algorithms they're using, explained Dr. Lee from their quantum computing division, have been modified to conceal certain types of transactions from regulatory oversight. This technical evidence proved crucial. It demonstrated not just individual instances of misconduct, but a systematic attempt to deceive at every level of operations. We've reached critical mass, Samantha announced during our final evidence review. Any one of these discoveries would be damaging. Together, they're catastrophic. The evidence painted a clear picture. Under Thaddeus's leadership, Sterling and Pierce had become a sophisticated machine for hiding unethical practices behind a veneer of traditional success. Your timing needs to be perfect, Eleanor advised, as we organize the final documentation. Release this information too soon, and they'll have time to create explanations. Too late, and you risk losing the element of surprise. Looking at the mountain of evidence we'd accumulated, I realized we had uncovered something far bigger than personal revenge. We had documented a systematic failure of traditional corporate leadership, and in doing so, created an irrefutable case for revolutionary change. Prepare the board briefing documents, I instructed Rachel. It's time to show them exactly what they've been presiding over. The evidence was ready. The stage was set. Soon Thaddeus would learn that his greatest vulnerability wasn't in what he'd done to me. It was in everything he'd done while believing he was untouchable. The 48 hours before the board meeting crackled with suppressed energy. Sterling and Pierce's Chicago headquarters hummed with rumors, each floor alive with whispered conversations about the mysterious emergency session. Through my temporary office window, I watched the pieces of my plan slide into their final positions. The London office just confirmed, Rachel reported, tablet in hand. Their morning trading session revealed another attempt by Thaddeus's team to conceal losses in the European portfolio. They're getting desperate. Perfect timing. Our quantum platform had documented every manipulation attempt, building an irrefutable record of their increasing recklessness. But something in Rachel's expression suggested there was more. Victoria's been making calls, she continued, lowering her voice. She reached out to 3 board members this morning, trying to gauge their loyalty to Thaddeus. Apparently, she's starting to sense which way the wind is blowing. A quiet ping from my laptop announced a secure message from Dr. Zhang in Hong Kong. Her team had completed their final analysis of Sterling and Pierce's Asian operations, uncovering a pattern of systematic client deception that would shock even the most hardened regulators. Ms. Chen? Brandon Torres appeared at my door, his usual nervous energy heightened by urgency. You need to see this. They're trying to purge the backup servers. I've managed to mirror everything, but they're clearly spooked. I watched through the glass walls as Thaddeus stalked past, his typically immaculate appearance showing signs of strain. 3 times today he'd summoned his tech team, demanding increasingly desperate measures to secure their digital tracks. "Let them try," Dr. Kumar remarked, reviewing Brandon's latest data capture. "Every deletion attempt creates its own forensic trail. They're only making our case stronger." The afternoon brought a parade of subtle confirmations that our plan was working. Judge Rodriguez's clerk delivered final verification that our evidence met all regulatory requirements. Charlotte Webb sent word that the London compliance team was fully prepared for the transition. "The Singapore exchange just closed," Diana reported during our final strategy session. "Our trading platform flagged 17 suspicious transactions in the last hour alone. They're trying to hide something big." Kevin's team, monitoring the quantum system, detected an unprecedented spike in algorithmic abnormalities. "They're running scared," he observed, showing me the pattern analysis. "Every trading desk is trying to cover its tracks simultaneously." A discreet message from Elizabeth Sterling confirmed our family allies were in position. "The trust votes are secured," she wrote. "The old guard won't be able to block the necessary changes." As evening settled over Chicago's financial district, Regina arrived with the final preparations for tomorrow's revelations. "The SEC has been quietly briefed," she confirmed. "They're standing by for our formal filing." Through the glass walls, I watched Victoria making her own last-minute moves, hurrying between offices with stacks of documents. Her designer heels clicked increasingly frantically against the marble floors as she attempted to salvage what she could of their crumbling empire. "She tried to access the executive backup servers," Brandon reported, monitoring the network activity. "But thanks to our quantum encryption, they can't alter the archived evidence without leaving digital fingerprints." A message from Harrison in risk management confirmed our final suspicions. Thaddeus had called an emergency meeting with his most loyal department heads, desperately trying to construct a unified narrative before the board meeting. "Too little, too late," Eleanor observed, reviewing our final documentation. "The evidence doesn't just suggest misconduct, it proves a systematic pattern of deception at every level of operations." As night fell, the office slowly emptied, leaving behind an atmosphere thick with anticipation. Tomorrow would change everything, but tonight belonged to final preparations. "Ms. Chen?" Michael appeared with urgent intelligence. "Thaddeus just tried to call an emergency executive committee meeting for 7 a.m. He's hoping to preempt the board session." I smiled, remembering how he'd once dismissed my understanding of corporate strategy. "Let him try. The committee members have already received our preliminary evidence package. They won't risk their own positions to protect him." A final secure call with Dr. Zhang confirmed our international coordinates were aligned. Asian markets would open just as our board meeting concluded, allowing for immediate global implementation of our new ethical trading protocols. "The quantum platform is fully operational," Kevin reported during his last system check. "Every trading desk worldwide is ready to transition the moment you give the signal." Looking out over the nighttime skyline, I watched lights burning in corner offices across the financial district. How many other companies were hiding similar secrets? How many other leaders were betraying trust for personal gain? "Tomorrow isn't just about Sterling and Pierce," I reminded my team during our final briefing. "It's about proving that ethical leadership isn't just morally right, it's economically essential." As midnight approached, Rachel delivered one last intelligence update. Thaddeus just left the building. He spent 2 hours in the executive document room, but thanks to Brandon's security protocols, every file he accessed was automatically logged and preserved. The stage was set. In less than 8 hours, the carefully constructed facade of Thaddeus's leadership would crumble, revealing the truth we'd spent months documenting. But more importantly, it would demonstrate that the future of finance belonged to those who understood that true power comes from integrity, not deception. "Get some rest," I advised my team as they prepared to leave. "Tomorrow, we rewrite the rules of corporate leadership." The night deepened over Chicago, but lights still burned in offices throughout Sterling and Pierce. Some belonged to Thaddeus's allies, desperately trying to protect their positions. Others belonged to those who had helped us gather evidence, ensuring every detail was preserved for tomorrow's revelations. Soon, very soon, everyone would understand that the greatest power lies not in maintaining corrupt systems, but in having the courage to transform them. The morning of the board meeting dawned, crisp and clear, sunlight glinting off Lake Michigan like scattered diamonds. I arrived at Sterling and Pierce headquarters at precisely 7:30 a.m., giving myself time to ensure every detail was perfect for the 9 a.m. revelation that would reshape Chicago's financial landscape. Thaddeus arrived at 6:15, Rachel reported, handing me my morning briefing. He's been in his office with Victoria and their core team since then. They've made 17 attempts to access secured servers in the last hour alone. Through the glass walls, I could see their increasingly frantic activity. Victoria's perfectly maintained appearance showed signs of strain, her designer suit slightly wrinkled from what had clearly been an all-night strategy session. The board members are beginning to arrive, Michael announced. Mr. Rothschild from New York just landed at O'Hare. Ms. Tanaka's car is approaching from the downtown Ritz. Each board member had received a cryptic preliminary brief the night before. Just enough information to ensure their attendance without revealing our full hand. The confusion and curiosity on their faces as they entered the building was evident, even from 42 floors up. Dr. Zhang's team is standing by, Kevin reported from the tech command center we'd established. The quantum platform is tracking every transaction attempt in real time. They've already caught 3 more instances of attempted evidence manipulation this morning. At 8:45, Regina arrived with our final documentation packages, 14 identical black leather portfolios, each containing irrefutable evidence of systematic corruption under Thaddeus's leadership. The weight of them felt satisfying in my hands. The SEC's Enforcement Division is quietly monitoring, she murmured, adjusting her signature pearl necklace. They've positioned agents in the building's lobby, just in case anyone tries to leave suddenly with sensitive materials. Harrison's message from risk management confirmed our last strategic piece. All trading systems are ready for immediate transition to the new ethical protocols. Asian markets open in 4 hours. At 8:55, I stood in my temporary office, watching the board members file into the main conference room. Each carried decades of financial experience, yet none had detected the systematic deception we were about to reveal. Or perhaps some had chosen not to see it. "It's time," Eleanor said softly, appearing at my door. The mentor who had guided me through months of preparation now stood ready to witness the culmination of our work. The main conference room of Sterling and Pierce had always impressed visitors with its commanding view of Chicago's skyline. Today, that view would witness a seismic shift in corporate power. Thaddeus sat at his usual place near the head of the massive mahogany table, attempting to project his trademark confidence. Victoria stood behind him, tablet in hand, her knuckles white with tension. Neither looked in my direction as I took my seat. "Before we begin," Thaddeus announced, trying to seize control of the meeting, "I'd like to address some rumors about our European operations." "Actually," Board Chairman Douglas Montgomery interrupted, "we have a rather different agenda this morning." He nodded in my direction. "Ms. Chen?" I stood, feeling the weight of months of preparation in this moment. "Ladies and gentlemen of the board, what you're about to see will fundamentally change your understanding of Sterling and Pierce's operations." Rachel and Michael distributed the black portfolios with practiced efficiency. The room fell silent as board members opened them, faces registering shock as they began to comprehend the scope of what they were seeing. "The first section," I continued, clicking to my opening slide, "documents systematic financial manipulation across all major divisions. Note the pattern of altered reports, each modification traced through our quantum analysis platform." Through the glass walls, I could see Brandon and Dr. Kumar in the tech center, monitoring real-time attempts to access secure servers. Thaddeus's remaining allies were still trying to cover their tracks, unaware that each attempt only strengthened our case. Ms. Tanaka, I addressed the board member from Tokyo. You'll find particular interest in Section 3, detailing how your concerns about Asian market compliance were deliberately suppressed. Thaddeus's face had lost its color as he frantically flipped through the documentation. Victoria had stopped even pretending to take notes, her tablet forgotten as she stared at the evidence of their exposed schemes. "This is absurd," Thaddeus finally sputtered, but his protest lacked conviction. "These allegations are supported by forensic evidence," Regina smoothly interjected, "including archived server logs, authenticated email trails, and documented witness testimony." I clicked to the next slide, revealing the complex web of offshore accounts they'd used to hide their activities. The money laundering operation was particularly sophisticated, I noted, though not sophisticated enough to escape our quantum analysis. Mr. Rothschild, the veteran board member from New York, removed his glasses slowly. "The scale of this. How it's unprecedented. But who authorized your investigation? Who are you really working for?" The moment had arrived. I nodded to Michael, who distributed the final documents, proof of my majority ownership through Phoenix Capital Partners. "As of last month," I announced to the stunned room, "I control 58% of Sterling and Pierce's voting shares. And as your new CEO, my first act will be implementing comprehensive ethical reform across all operations." The silence that followed was absolute. Through the glass walls, I could see other employees gathering, drawn by the palpable tension emanating from the conference room. Perfect. Let them witness the moment when true leadership replaced corrupt power. Thaddeus's world was crumbling. Before his eyes, every carefully constructed deception exposed to the harsh light of truth. But this wasn't just about personal revenge anymore. It was about proving that ethical leadership wasn't just possible. It was essential for modern finance. "The choice before this board is simple," I concluded, standing at the head of the table. That had once been Thaddeus's domain. "We can emerge from this crisis as leaders in ethical finance, or we can watch our company destroyed by its own corruption. The documentation in front of you makes clear which path I intend to take." The revolution had begun, and there was no turning back. The hours following the board meeting unleashed a tsunami of change throughout Sterling and Pierce. By noon, the building's entire security protocol had been updated, with new access codes and clearances reflecting the dramatic shift in power. Thaddeus's executive parking space, once a symbol of his dominance, now displayed my name in fresh paint. "The BAO. Asian markets open in 2 hours," Kevin announced from our newly established command center. Dr. Zhang's team is ready to implement the ethical trading protocols across all international platforms. Through the glass walls, I watched the ripple effects of our revelation spread floor by floor. Junior analysts who had feared sharing innovative ideas now clustered around whiteboards, their enthusiasm unleashed. Veterans who had survived Thaddeus's regime by keeping their heads down now stood taller, sensing the winds of change. "We've secured all sensitive documents," Brandon reported, his tech team having completed their sweep of executive offices. "And you might find this interesting." He handed me a tablet showing security footage from early morning, Victoria frantically shredding papers before the board meeting. "Too late," Regina remarked, reviewing the footage. "Our quantum backup system captured everything. The SEC's forensic team is already processing the digital traces." The most immediate transformation occurred on the trading floor. Freed from Thaddeus's restrictive policies, traders embraced our new ethical algorithms with surprising enthusiasm. The quantum platform's real-time compliance monitoring gave them confidence to explore innovative strategies without fear of crossing ethical lines. "Ms. Chen?" Amanda Zhao appeared with urgent news. "The London office is requesting immediate implementation of the new protocols. They've already identified 3 major clients wanting to transfer additional portfolios under our ethical management framework. A commotion near the executive elevator drew my attention. Thaddeus, still reeling from the morning's revelations, was attempting to access his former office. The new security system smoothly denied his credentials, a small but significant symbol of his fallen status. "Sir?" The newly appointed head of security, Marcus Reynolds, intercepted him professionally. "I'll need to escort you to HR for processing and exit procedures." Victoria, watching from her soon-to-be former desk, finally grasped the full implications of our takeover. Her perfectly manicured fingers trembled as she began packing her personal items, the designer handbag that had once symbolized her ascent, now serving as a container for her career's end. "The transformation task force is assembled," Rachel reported. Tablet displaying profiles of our carefully selected change agents. "Zara Patel's team is ready to implement the new risk assessment protocols, and Jenny Kang has prepared the Asian market transition strategy." In the main conference room, now, our command center for the transition, Eleanor coordinated with global team leaders. "Singapore's compliance unit is fully aligned," she confirmed. "They're particularly impressed with our quantum-based ethical monitoring system." Dr. Kumar's data team had already begun analyzing years of archived transactions, using our advanced algorithms to identify patterns of misconduct that would help prevent future violations. "We're not just cleaning house," she explained, displaying complex data visualizations. "We're creating a new standard for industry transparency." A subtle buzz from my phone announced a message from Elizabeth Sterling. "The family trust votes are secured. The old guard can't block any of your reforms now." Thaddeus's own mother had chosen ethical leadership over family loyalty, a decision that spoke volumes about the necessity of our changes. "Ms. Chen?" Michael appeared with another update. "Judge Rodriguez just confirmed the regulatory frameworks are in place for immediate implementation of our ethical trading protocols." Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I watched the Chicago skyline shimmer in the afternoon sun. In boardrooms across the financial district, executives were undoubtedly discussing the morning's events, recognizing that Sterling and Pierce's transformation would force them to reconsider their own practices. "The press is gathering in the lobby," Rachel noted. "The Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, Bloomberg, they're all requesting statements about the leadership change." But my attention was drawn to a different scene unfolding on the 3rd floor. A group of junior analysts, led by a bright young woman who had been repeatedly overlooked under Thaddeus's leadership, was presenting an innovative market analysis to senior traders. The enthusiasm and engagement on both sides represented everything our revolution stood for. "Your office is ready," Michael announced quietly. The executive suite had been transformed, the heavy masculine furniture and dark woods replaced with modern collaborative spaces. The message was clear. This was a new era of transparent, inclusive leadership. As I stepped into what had once been Thaddeus's domain, I noticed something he'd left behind in his hasty departure, a framed magazine cover celebrating his appointment as CEO 5 years ago. The headline read, "Sterling and Pierce, Tradition Triumphs in Modern Finance." "Have that archived," I instructed Michael. "It's a reminder of why change was necessary." The afternoon brought a steady stream of developments, international clients. Sensing the shift in philosophy, began reaching out through various channels. Talented professionals who had left under Thaddeus's regime expressed interest in returning. Even competitors started inquiring about licensing our ethical trading platform. "The quantum system just flagged something interesting," Kevin reported late in the day. "It's detecting a significant increase in ethical compliance across all trading desks. People aren't just following the new rules, they're embracing them." As the sun set over Lake Michigan, I stood in my new office, watching the transformation continue to unfold. The revolution we'd initiated wasn't just about changing leadership. It was about proving that ethical success was not only possible, but essential in modern finance. Tomorrow, I told my assembled team during our final briefing, we begin the real work of rebuilding Sterling and Pierce. Today was about removing the old guard. Tomorrow is about creating something entirely new. The power shift was complete, but the true transformation was just beginning. The first wave of organizational changes hit Sterling and Pierce like a controlled explosion, systematically dismantling decades of entrenched hierarchy. Within a week, the physical transformation of our headquarters reflected the philosophical shift. Walls came down, collaborative spaces emerged, and the notorious executive floor became an innovation hub open to all employees. The mentorship program applications are overwhelming, Amanda reported during our morning briefing. Over 200 junior employees have signed up, including some surprising names. She passed me a tablet showing Sophia Martinez, Victoria's former assistant, now leading a team developing new compliance protocols. Through the glass walls of our redesigned office space, I watched Derek Foster, a brilliant analyst who'd been repeatedly passed over due to his unconventional background, presenting his market analysis to a rapt audience. Under Thaddeus's regime, he wouldn't have made it past the junior trading desk. The quantum platform just achieved something remarkable, Kevin announced, bursting into my office. It predicted and prevented a potential ethical breach in our Mumbai office before it could occur. The AI's learning curve is exceeding all projections. Dr. Kumar's data team had integrated ethical algorithms so seamlessly into our trading systems that compliance was now proactive rather than reactive. Traders found themselves guided toward ethical decisions naturally, without sacrificing profitability. Ms. Chen? Michael appeared with news from our London office. Charlotte Webb's team has successfully implemented the new transparency protocols. They're reporting a 47% increase in client trust metrics. The transformation wasn't just internal. Our newly established Ethics Innovation Lab, headed by Dr. Isabel Kumar, had become a magnet for top talent across the industry. Professionals who had grown disillusioned with traditional finance found new purpose in our mission. The Singapore Sovereign Wealth Fund just doubled their investment, Diana reported, her eyes bright with excitement. They're calling our ethical trading platform the future of finance. 3 other major funds are following their lead. Even the physical layout of our trading floor reflected our new philosophy. Gone were the aggressive, testosterone-fueled pods of Thaddeus's era. Instead, circular, collaborative spaces encouraged cross-team communication and ethical decision-making. The mentorship results are exceeding expectations, reported Dr. Yuki Tanaka, our newly appointed head of professional development. Senior traders are finding that teaching ethical practices actually deepens their own understanding of market dynamics. A small commotion near the Innovation Hub caught my attention. Zara Patel's quantitative analysis team had just cracked a particularly challenging problem in ethical risk assessment. The celebration that followed included both veterans and newcomers, another barrier broken. Your new initiative is causing quite a stir, Rachel noted, showing me the latest industry headlines. Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan have both announced ethical trading task forces. They're scrambling to catch up. The revolution we'd started was spreading beyond our walls. Our quantum-based ethical trading platform had become the talk of the industry, with competitors rushing to develop their own versions. But they missed the crucial element. It wasn't just about technology, but about fundamentally reimagining corporate culture. Ms. Chen, Brandon appeared with an interesting discovery. Remember those archived servers Thaddeus tried to purge? We've recovered something fascinating, evidence of talented employees he systematically suppressed. We're reaching out to offer them their rightful positions. The afternoon brought a parade of positive developments. Jenny Kang's team closed a record-breaking deal using our ethical investment framework. Harrison's risk management group identified and prevented potential compliance issues before they could develop. The quantum platform's success rate in predicting market ethics violations reached 99.7%. The transformation metrics are unprecedented, Eleanor observed during our executive review. Employee satisfaction up 89%, client retention at 97%, and ethical compliance rates setting new industry standards. But the most significant change was in the daily interactions I witnessed. Junior analysts freely shared innovative ideas with senior managers. Veterans who had once guarded their knowledge now mentored newcomers enthusiastically. The toxic competition of Thaddeus's era had been replaced by collaborative excellence. The Harvard Business Review wants to do a case study, Rachel announced. They're calling it the Sterling and Pierce Revolution, Ethical Innovation in Modern Finance. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I watched the sun set over Chicago's financial district. In boardrooms across the city, executives were undoubtedly discussing our transformation. Some would resist change, clinging to outdated models of power and control. Others would recognize the inevitable shift toward ethical leadership. "Your father would be proud," my mother remarked during our evening call. "He always said true innovation comes from empowering others, not controlling them." As night fell, I reviewed our progress with the executive team. The quantum platform's success had exceeded our wildest expectations. The mentorship program was reshaping careers. Our ethical investment framework was becoming the industry standard. "This isn't just about changing one company," I reminded them. "It's about proving that ethical leadership and profitable innovation aren't mutually exclusive. They're inseparable." The revolution we'd started was transforming more than just Sterling and Pierce. It was creating a new model of corporate success, one where ethical behavior and innovation drove profitability, where talent was recognized regardless of background, and where true leadership meant empowering others to excel. Looking out at the city lights, I realized that the revenge I'd once sought had evolved into something far more powerful. A fundamental reimagining of what corporate success could mean in the modern world. The ripple effects of Sterling and Pierce's transformation reached far beyond Chicago's financial district. 3 months after our takeover, I found myself addressing the World Economic Forum in Davos, explaining how our ethical revolution was reshaping global finance. "Ms. Chen," interrupted Klaus Weber, CEO of Deutsche Financial Group during the panel discussion, "your quantum-based ethical trading platform has forced us to completely reconsider our approach to compliance. How do you respond to critics who say this level of transparency will hurt profitability?" I smiled, clicking to a slide that showed Sterling and Pierce's latest performance metrics. "Our returns have increased by 312% since implementing ethical trading protocols. It turns out doing the right thing is incredibly profitable." The audience of global financial leaders shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Many had dismissed our methods as idealistic when we started. Now, faced with our undeniable success, they were scrambling to adapt. "Breaking news from Wall Street," Rachel whispered, passing me a tablet during a break. Goldman Sachs had just announced a complete overhaul of their trading systems, explicitly citing Sterling and Pierce's model as inspiration. 3 other major banks had followed suit within hours. "Your quantum platform has created quite a stir." "In Tokyo," remarked Hiroshi Tanaka, head of the Japanese Financial Services Agency, during our private meeting, "we're considering making similar ethical monitoring systems mandatory for all licensed trading institutions." Back in Chicago, our influence continued to expand in unexpected ways. The University of Chicago's Booth School of Business had created a new course, Ethical Innovation in Finance, the Sterling and Pierce Case Study. I'd been invited to give the inaugural lecture. "The applications for our internship program have exploded," Amanda reported during our weekly review. "We're getting candidates from Harvard, Stanford, Oxford, all specifically citing our ethical leadership model as their primary attraction." Through the glass walls of our innovation hub, I watched as Derek Foster conducted a training session for visiting executives from Singapore's sovereign wealth fund. The same man who couldn't get promoted under Thaddeus was now teaching global leaders about ethical trading strategies. Ms. Chen? Brandon appeared with interesting news. Our quantum platform just detected a pattern of unethical trading at First Continental Bank. Their board reached out privately, requesting our help in implementing similar monitoring systems. The transformation of the financial industry was accelerating. Dr. Zhang's team in Hong Kong reported that 17 major Asian institutions had adopted our ethical compliance frameworks. European banks were forming a consortium to develop compatible systems. The SEC is using our case as a template, Regina announced during the executive briefing. They're developing new regulations based on our transparency protocols. The EU and Asian regulatory bodies are following suit. Even our competitors were being forced to evolve. Morgan Stanley had hired an ethics innovation officer. JP Morgan launched an ethical trading initiative, but they were missing the crucial element. Cultural transformation had to come before technological solutions. Your morning meeting is here, Michael informed me. The pension fund managers from Norway's sovereign wealth fund. The Norwegians, known for their strict ethical investment criteria, had been watching our transformation with intense interest. Your system proves what we've long believed, their chief investment officer remarked. Ethical practice and profitable growth are natural partners. Our influence extended beyond traditional finance. Silicon Valley startups were incorporating our ethical AI principles into their fintech applications. Business schools worldwide were revising their curricula to include case studies of our transformation. The London Stock Exchange is implementing our protocols, Kevin reported excitedly. Their technical team just requested our assistance in calibrating their ethical monitoring systems. Dr. Kumar's latest innovation had caught the attention of global regulators. Her team had developed an AI system that could predict market-wide ethical breaches before they occurred, potentially preventing financial crises. The quantum platform just achieved something unprecedented, Brandon announced during our afternoon briefing. It identified and prevented a coordinated attempt at market manipulation across 3 major exchanges simultaneously. Through the windows of my office, I watched as a group of young analysts collaborated with senior traders, their excitement palpable as they developed new ethical trading strategies. This was the future of finance: collaborative, innovative, and fundamentally ethical. Your next appointment is with the World Bank representatives, Rachel reminded me. They're interested in implementing our model across developing markets. The scope of our influence had grown beyond anything I'd imagined when planning my takeover of Sterling & Pierce. What had started as a mission to transform one company had evolved into a global revolution in financial ethics. Ms. Chen? Michael appeared with breaking news. The Financial Times just named you most influential person in global finance. They're calling Sterling & Pierce's transformation a turning point in corporate history. As night fell over, Chicago's financial district, I reflected on how far we'd come. The revenge I'd once sought against Thaddeus had evolved into something far more significant, a fundamental reimagining of what success meant in modern finance. Your father would be proud, my mother texted from Hong Kong. You haven't just changed one company. You've changed an entire industry's understanding of what's possible. Looking out at the city lights, I realized that our revolution was just beginning. Each new institution that adopted our methods, each regulator who embraced our standards, each student who studied our transformation, was part of a growing movement toward ethical excellence in global finance. The true victory wasn't in proving Thaddeus wrong. It was in proving that there was a better way to lead, to succeed, and to transform an entire industry. 6 months into Sterling & Pierce's transformation, I witnessed something remarkable. Thaddeus, now working from his modest, third-floor desk, was earnestly mentoring a group of junior analysts. The man who had once dismissed young talent was now nurturing it, his former arrogance replaced by genuine humility. His team's ethical compliance scores are among our highest, Brandon reported, showing me the quantum platform's latest analytics. He's become one of our strongest advocates for transparent trading practices. Through the glass walls, I watched as Victoria entered the building, looking different from the polished predator she'd once been. After a stint in corporate rehabilitation and ethics training, she'd earned a position with our compliance department, using her intimate knowledge of past violations to prevent future ones. Her whistleblower program has identified 12 potential violations across the industry, Regina noted, reviewing the latest reports. She's actually making a difference now, instead of covering up problems. The transformation wasn't limited to former adversaries. Jenny Kang, once afraid to voice her innovative ideas, had blossomed into a powerhouse of ethical investment strategy. Her team's success with Asian markets had made her a sought-after speaker at global finance conferences. Ms. Chen? Michael appeared with an unexpected update. Dr. Kumar's latest project has taken an interesting turn. She's collaborating with Thaddeus on developing new ethical trading algorithms. Apparently, his experience with manipulation makes him excellent at predicting potential violations. In the Innovation Hub, Derek Foster was leading a workshop on ethical market analysis. The same man who'd been repeatedly passed over for promotion under the old regime was now training visiting executives from Wall Street's top firms. The personal growth metrics are fascinating, Amanda observed during our weekly review. Employee development scores have increased by 215%, with the highest improvements coming from former members of Thaddeus's inner circle. Charlotte Webb, our London compliance chief, had evolved from quiet record keeper to influential industry leader. Her detailed documentation of past violations had become a blueprint for preventing future ethical breaches. The Harvard Business Review wants to interview her, Rachel reported. They're calling her transformation a model for ethical leadership development. Even Elizabeth Sterling, Thaddeus's mother, had found a new purpose. Her experience witnessing the company's transformation had inspired her to establish a foundation supporting women in finance. Your scholarship program has received over 3,000 applications, she informed me during our monthly lunch. Young women who never thought they had a chance in traditional finance see Sterling and Pierce as their opportunity. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I watched Sophia Martinez, now head of our junior analyst program, conducting interviews for new positions. The former assistant who had once enabled corruption was now fiercely committed to fostering ethical talent. Ms. Chen? Brandon interrupted with an interesting development. Remember those analysts Thaddeus used to suppress? They've formed an innovation think tank with his full support. They're developing groundbreaking ethical trading strategies. Dr. Zhang's team in Hong Kong reported similar patterns of personal growth across our Asian operations. Former defenders of traditional practices had become champions of ethical innovation, their own transformations inspiring others. The quantum platform has detected something remarkable, Kevin announced during our afternoon briefing. The ethical decision-making patterns are becoming self-reinforcing. People aren't just following rules, they're actively choosing ethical approaches. In the main conference room, I observed a scene that would have been impossible 6 months ago. Veterans who had once guarded their knowledge were enthusiastically sharing insights with newcomers. The toxic competition of the past had been replaced by collaborative growth. Your father always said, my mother reminded me during our evening call, that true change happens one person at a time. You haven't just transformed systems, you've transformed people. The most surprising growth came from unexpected quarters. Judge Rodriguez, initially skeptical of our methods, had become a passionate advocate for ethical finance reform. Her experience overseeing our transformation had changed her view of what was possible in corporate governance. The personal development data is remarkable, Eleanor noted during our executive review. It's not just about professional growth. People are reporting higher satisfaction in all areas of their lives. As night fell over Chicago's financial district, I reflected on my own transformation. The woman who had sought revenge had evolved into someone focused on creating positive change. The satisfaction of seeing others grow had far exceeded the temporary pleasure of retribution. Ms. Chen? Michael appeared with one final update for the day. The Wall Street Journal is running a feature on personal transformation in finance. They want to interview our entire executive team, including Thaddeus. Looking out at the city lights, I realized that the true victory wasn't in punishing those who had wronged me. It was in creating an environment where everyone, even former adversaries, could become their best selves. Your next appointment is with the Global Leadership Council, Rachel reminded me. They want to understand how we've achieved such profound personal transformation across the organization. The revenge I'd once sought had evolved into something far more powerful, a catalyst for personal growth that extended far beyond our company walls. Each individual's transformation added to the collective proof that ethical leadership could change not just systems, but souls. 1 year after our transformation of Sterling and Pierce, I stood on the stage of the United Nations Global Financial Summit, preparing to announce our most ambitious initiative yet. The packed auditorium included representatives from every major financial institution worldwide, all eager to learn from what the Financial Times had dubbed the Sterling and Pierce miracle. The numbers tell an extraordinary story, I began, gesturing to the display behind me. Ethical compliance up 478%, client trust metrics at record levels, and most importantly, proof that moral leadership and profitability aren't mutually exclusive. Through the crowd, I spotted familiar faces. Dr. Zhang, whose quantum computing team had revolutionized ethical trading. Judge Rodriguez, whose legal frameworks had become the global standard. Even Thaddeus, now a respected speaker on corporate transformation, sat attentively in the middle section. The Sterling and Pierce Foundation has approved its 1,000th scholarship, Rachel whispered as I stepped off stage. Young women from underprivileged backgrounds worldwide were now entering the financial sector, each carrying our vision of ethical leadership forward. Back in Chicago, our headquarters had become a pilgrimage site for corporate leaders seeking to understand true transformation. The infamous executive floor where Thaddeus once ruled now housed the Global Ethics Innovation Center, a collaborative space where competitors worked together to solve industry-wide challenges. The quantum platform just achieved another milestone. Kevin reported during our morning briefing. Its ethical prediction algorithms are now being used by central banks worldwide. We've prevented 3 potential market crises this quarter alone. Through the glass walls of our innovation hub, I watched Derek Foster leading a delegation from the Chinese Banking Regulatory Commission. His team's ethical trading strategies had become required study at leading business schools globally. Ms. Chen? Brandon appeared with remarkable news. The artificial intelligence we developed for ethical compliance has evolved beyond finance. Healthcare systems and environmental protection agencies are adapting our algorithms for their sectors. The transformation of Sterling and Pierce had catalyzed changes far beyond our industry. Dr. Kumar's team now collaborated with Silicon Valley giants on ethical AI development. Jenny Kang's sustainable investment frameworks were being applied to climate change initiatives. Your impact extends beyond business, observed United Nations Secretary-General Amara Patel during our private meeting. You've proven that ethical transformation can be both profitable and socially revolutionary. Even Victoria had found her true calling. Her corporate rehabilitation program, now implemented at companies worldwide, had helped thousands of professionals transition from toxic practices to ethical leadership. The latest Harvard Business Review study is fascinating, Eleanor noted, reviewing the research. They're calling it the Sterling and Pierce effect, how ethical leadership creates a cascade of positive changes across entire industries. In our trading floor's quantum computing center, I watched as Thaddeus collaborated with young innovators on next-generation ethical algorithms. His journey from corporate tyrant to mentor had become a case study in personal redemption. Ms. Chen? Michael interrupted with breaking news. The World Bank just announced their adoption of our ethical frameworks as a requirement for all future financial partnerships. The IMF is following suit. The revolution we'd started had grown, beyond anything I could have imagined. Our ethical trading platform had become the global standard. Our corporate culture a model for transformation. Our success story a blueprint for change. The next generation of leaders is remarkable, Amanda reported during our talent review. The interns who started under our ethical leadership program are now heading departments at major institutions worldwide. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I watched Chicago's financial district transform as other companies adopted our open, collaborative architecture. The physical changes reflected deeper shifts in corporate culture across the industry. Your father would be proud, my mother remarked during the opening of our new Asia-Pacific headquarters in Singapore. You haven't just changed a company or an industry, you've changed how people think about power and success. The Sterling and Pierce Global Leadership Institute, housed in what was once Thaddeus's executive suite, had trained thousands of professionals in ethical leadership. Each graduate carried our vision back to their organizations, creating ripples of transformation worldwide. The quantum ethical trading system has achieved something unprecedented, Dr. Zhang announced during our global conference. It's not just preventing violations, it's actively inspiring innovative ethical solutions across markets. As sunset painted Chicago's skyline in golden hues, I reflected on our journey. The revenge I'd once sought had evolved into a global movement for positive change. Sterling and Pierce wasn't just a company anymore. It was proof that ethical leadership could transform the world. Your next appointment is with the Nobel Committee, Rachel reminded me. They're considering creating a new category for ethical innovation in global finance. Looking out at the city lights, I realized that our revolution had succeeded beyond my wildest dreams. We hadn't just changed how business was done, we'd changed what people believed was possible. The true measure of success, I told the assembled global leadership team, isn't in the profits we've made or the systems we've changed. It's in proving that ethical leadership isn't just morally right. It's the key to creating a better future for everyone. The revenge that had once driven me had transformed into something far more powerful, a legacy of positive change that would continue long after we were gone. 2 years to the day after taking control of Sterling and Pierce, I found myself back in the conference room where it had all begun. The space had transformed, like everything else. Gone were the imposing mahogany barriers, replaced by collaborative workspaces flooded with natural light. But the view of Chicago's skyline remained, now serving as a backdrop for a very different kind of meeting. The Financial Women's Association has named our mentorship program a global standard, Amanda reported, her tablet displaying statistics that would have seemed impossible 2 years ago. Over 5,000 women worldwide have completed the BAI leadership track. They're calling it the Chen method of corporate transformation. Through the glass walls, I watched a scene that embodied everything we'd achieved. Thaddeus, now heading our Ethics Innovation Division, was co-presenting with Victoria to a group of international regulators. Their topic: Transforming Corporate Culture, Lessons from the Front Lines. Your quantum platform just prevented something remarkable, Kevin announced, joining our morning briefing. It identified and stopped a coordinated attempt at market manipulation across 5 major exchanges simultaneously. The SEC is calling it a watershed moment in financial security. The morning brought a parade of visitors through our innovation hub. Dr. Zhang's team demonstrated the latest ethical AI developments to representatives from the World Bank. Jenny Kang shared sustainable investment strategies with a delegation from emerging markets. Derek Foster conducted a masterclass in ethical trading for Harvard Business School students. Ms. Chen, Michael appeared with news that brought our journey full circle. The writer from Forbes is here for the anniversary piece. She's particularly interested in how revenge transformed into revolution. Looking at my reflection in the window, I barely recognized the woman who had once plotted takeover in anger. The path from revenge to redemption had changed not just Sterling and Pierce, but everyone it touched. Your father's philosophy about power and purpose, my mother observed during our video call, it's alive in everything you've built. He always said true success isn't in defeating others, but in lifting them up. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I watched as new employees explored our collaborative spaces. Each one carried a tablet loaded with our quantum ethical trading platform, technology that had grown from a tool of transformation into a global standard for financial integrity. The numbers tell an extraordinary story, Eleanor noted during our executive review. But the real success is in the lives changed, the careers transformed, the barriers broken. Brandon interrupted with breaking news from our Global Monitoring Center. The quantum system just achieved perfect prediction accuracy for ethical violations. We're not just preventing problems anymore. We're inspiring solutions before challenges arise. The afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. Elizabeth Sterling, Thaddeus's mother and now a fierce advocate for corporate reform, arrived with an announcement. The Sterling Family Trust is dedicating its entire endowment to ethical leadership education. Your revolution deserves to become our legacy. Regina shared updates from our legal department that showed how far we'd come. The SEC is using our transformation as a template for new regulatory frameworks. The EU and Asian markets are following suit. We've literally rewritten the rules of global finance. Ms. Chen? Rachel appeared with a message that captured the essence of our journey. A young analyst from Mumbai just won the Global Innovation Challenge with an ethical trading algorithm inspired by your story. She says your example proved that the greatest power lies in transforming systems, not controlling them. As sunset painted the sky in shades of possibility, I gathered our global leadership team for a moment of reflection. The faces around the table told their own stories of transformation. Dr. Kumar, whose ethical AI had revolutionized multiple industries. Judge Rodriguez, whose legal frameworks had become global standards. Charlotte Webb, whose courage in documenting corruption had paved the way for systematic change. 2 years ago, I began. We set out to prove that ethical leadership wasn't just morally right, it was the key to future success. Today, we've shown that true power lies not in what we can take from others, but in what we can help them become. The night deepened over Chicago's financial district, but lights still burned in offices throughout our building. Not from fear or pressure, as in Thaddeus's day, but from genuine enthusiasm for innovation and positive change. Your next appointment, Michael reminded me softly, is with the next generation. The Global Leadership Institute's new class is waiting to hear your story. Looking out at the city lights, I realized that the revenge I'd once sought had evolved into something far more meaningful, a legacy of transformation that would ripple through generations. The woman who had entered Sterling and Pierce seeking vengeance had found something far more powerful, the ability to create lasting, positive change. Tell them this, I said, turning to face the future leaders gathering in our innovation hub. The greatest revenge isn't in proving others wrong. It's in proving that there's a better way forward. Success isn't about power over others, but about empowering everyone to reach their full potential. And somewhere in this vast city, someone else was facing their own moment of choice between revenge and transformation. They would find in our story not just inspiration, but a proven path toward something greater than personal victory. The power to transform not just themselves, but the world around them. The revolution we'd started would continue, not through force or fear, but through the undeniable proof that ethical leadership, genuine innovation, and inclusive success were not just possible. They were the future of global business. The T. Sunset on another day at Sterling and Pierce. But the light of transformation we'd ignited would continue to shine, guiding future generations toward a brighter, more ethical tomorrow.